Here we go, baby. A big day for the Amiga community. Air Yuri in the hot tub. It's hot in here, baby. Amiga Cammy, great to see you, Cammy. We gotta get your game on the stream one day, too. Captain's on the bridge. Santi Dark G. Today is a huge, huge day. I hope you're all excited as I am. We're gonna play a demo, brand new AAA Amiga game, Metro Siege. But it's not just about the game today. It is about an entire plan. What's up, everyone? It's great to see everyone in the chat. I'm super, super excited. I'm so excited I'm overmodulating like crazy. Not the AAA chipset. Exactly, Brother Bill. I'm taking a sip of water here. I'm about ready to go. Are y'all ready? I hope you're all ready. The first thing I'm gonna show here has nothing to do with the stream other than it getting us all fired up. One of my all-time favorite demos. Are you ready? You better be ready. I'm ready. Here we go, baby. Turn it up. I'm ready, baby. You ready? Let's do this. Here we go.
Are you ready?
Big day, big day. I hope you're all psyched. I'm so psyched. I love this demo so much. I had to play it. I had to play it to get in the right mindset, you know? It's like, are you ready? It's like, hell yeah, we're ready. We're ready to see a brand new AAA Amiga game today. I'm ready to hang out with all my great friends in chat. I got a new streaming setup, so I'm like a little bit nervous about it. I hope it all works. So far, so good. This is awesome. Yeah, turn it up, DJ Billy Nest. You know it. Turn it up. Yeah! I had to play that demo, one of my all-time favorites. Yeah, it is an AGA demo. It's Lorem Ipsum. Oh man, Chaser to the music. It's so good. Welcome to the stream, everyone. I am so excited for today. I got a new streaming setup. It's awesome to see everyone in chat. Thank you for the resubs. Oh man, who subbed here? You know what? The music's a little bit low. Let me turn up the Ace Man. This is not going to be a normal stream. Razor XG, thank you for the sub. Oh my god, this is not a test stream, Invent. This is not a test. This is the real thing. Today's gonna be a great day. I'm super excited. I've got Mike Parent on the stream today. We're gonna play a brand new Amiga game. It's AAA quality. It's absolutely incredible. It's blowing me away. It's just a demo. It's not available yet. It'll be coming out soon. I'm super excited for it. I'm just super excited to have everyone here. Thanks everyone for all the resubs. Play a Valley, thank you for the resub. I know it's been 2 weeks since I streamed. Pixels at Dawn Gaming, thank you so much. Today's gonna be a little bit different. Like I said, I'm not gonna be involved in chat as much, just because I wanna give Mike, my guest, the attention that he deserves. If you have a question for Mike, or me, please do the @AmigaBill in the chat so I can see it easier. Dancing Wolf, all's well. Thank you, bro. Thank you, buddy. Wow. Thank you, Pixels at Dawn Gaming, for the resub. Thank you, Razor XG. Thank you, Playavelli. It is Mr. Cola with the resub. Thank you. Thanks everyone for the subs. Again, I don't do it for the subs, man. I do it just to hang out with my friends. And no news this week. This week's stream, you know, usually I start these streams with some news. I'm not gonna do any news today. We're just gonna get right into it. It's Metro Siege time. Hold on to your hats. Are you... McGeezer75, my man McGeezer. Rygar is looking sick, dude. It is looking sick. I cannot wait to have you on the stream when Rygar comes out. But I don't want to just blah 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 anymore. I want to get like right into it. I hope you're all sitting down, because if you're not sitting down, you're gonna fall over when you see this game. This is the intro to this game. Keep in mind, all this is coming from a 1 megabyte Amiga 500. 1 megabyte Amiga 500. It's time for some Metro Siege unveiling happening now. Let's do this. Oh yeah, I'm ready. I see only 25 frames per second, but still nice. The truth is, I broadcast at 30 frames per second, and that's why it looks like that. The actual game is 50 frames per second. Rule of Thirds, thank you for the sub. The actual game is 50 frames. I thought about streaming at 50 frames per second for this stream. The problem is, it's a bottleneck for some folks who don't have the best, internet bandwidth. So we're streaming at 30 frames. Game is at 50 frames. The trailer has got me so freaking psyched. I can't wait to play the game. So I think it's time to bring on my guest, the one and the only Mike Parent, who I didn't even know Mike. Mike just kind of came out of nowhere. He came out of nowhere and like dropped that on me, and I was like, are you kidding me? This is like the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Yes, Amiga 500 with 1 megabyte, and it's crazy, right? I want to know more about the game. And I know you do too. So let's bring on Mike. Let's see. You know what? I got a little intro video for Mike. Before I bring on Mike, I'm gonna give you a little background on who he is, and I think it's best done with this video. So we'll play this video, and then Mike will be on live with us all. Here we go, Mike.
Imagine waking up in an alternate reality where the best game studios of the 8 and 16-bit era had spent those years making totally different but equally great games than the franchises you know and love. Hi fellow retro gamers, I'm Mike, and I've been a professional pixel artist for over a decade. making art and animations for franchises like Family Guy, Superman and Batman Heroes United, Mighty Switch Force, Thor God of Thunder for the DS, and many more. This is a game I'm co-creating with another professional pixel artist. It will be released for PC, Mac, Linux, Android, iOS, and likely Xbox. While it's being developed with modern tools for modern devices, it's designed around the graphical limitations of the original 8-bit NES. Once it's finished, we'll be looking to enhance the graphics and work with others to create a 16-bit version of the game that runs on classic Amiga computers. What are classic Amigas capable of? These are two game projects I've been working on with a friend. Programmed in Amos, a basic programming language, we've got this running smoothly on an unenhanced Amiga 500. And here's a game demo I had started a while back with Code Tapper, a fantastic programmer in the Amiga community whose assembly skills and knowledge of hardware banging techniques allowed us to get all this parallax scrolling in color running smoothly on stock OCS or ECS Amigas like the A500. I've also spent the last several months working with a great team of developers who have already created and published several classic Amiga games over the last few years. We're making very fast progress on a console-quality arcade-style game. One of these mock-ups I had made is a clue as to what kind of game it is. We're not quite ready to reveal the game to the public yet, but the rest of the team has agreed to let me show a few seconds of gameplay footage in the thank you video for anyone who becomes a patron at any tier. And finishing my own projects is not my only goal. I want to help and encourage other game developers to achieve the highest quality possible for their projects, and to eventually make the Amiga the most attractive target platform for anyone who wants to make a high-quality retro video game. My YouTube channel, Bitbeam Canon, already has several previous pixel art and Amiga game development related live streams, illustration and pixel art tutorials, and more. I'll continue to have other retro game developers on as guests, where I'll provide free feedback and suggested art edits to improve the visual quality of their projects. We're also creating and releasing tools and eventually entire game engines to make creating high-quality classic Amiga games as easy and attractive as possible, both for the existing Amiga community and for the pixel artists and retro game developers I hope to attract to Amiga game development. If you like these projects and videos, and you'd like to help them get finished and released faster and at an even higher quality, then please consider becoming a Patreon backer. I'll do my best to make the entire creation process as entertaining and educational as possible during the entire development process with frequent live streams, videos, and progress updates. And please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Bitbeam Canon, to stay up to date on everything I'm working on and help spread the word by liking and sharing. I really appreciate your support.
All right, everyone, there you have it. That is Michael's intro video, and here he is on the stream. Michael, welcome to the stream. It is a pleasure and an honor to have you. Thank you for coming on the stream today.
Well, thanks very much for having me on the stream. I'm really looking forward to this for a lot of reasons, especially to be able to be here to share where we are so far with Metro Siege with the world on your show, and to just talk about some of the other plans that I and Bitbeam Canon have for just bringing as much pixel goodness to the Amiga as we can. It's been a lifelong dream of mine to really show off what the Amiga has been capable of all this time in competing with other 16-bit consoles and arcade systems. So.
Awesome,
Anyway.
Mike. Well, it's a pleasure having you here. I'm so lucky to have you on, and I'm so lucky to have so many great people here in chat. We get together about once a week, and it's just like a hangout for all Amiga fans. And we play all the new Amiga games that come out. And I gotta say, this absolutely blew me away. As Roar says in chat, this is like a Streets of Rage killers. It's fantastic. And today we're gonna play your game. But today's stream is a lot more than just about one game. It's about a whole vision you have for the future of Amiga gaming. So I can't wait to get into that as well. So Mike, why don't you just give a little intro of yourself and a little bit of your background in Amiga and your professional life before we start playing the game.
Right. Unfortunately, I had the video muted stream, so forgive me if I repeat a little bit of what was said. But I think if I stick to my more personal history with the Amiga, I don't think that video covered too much of that. So I was introduced to the Amiga, I think around the age of 14 years old, and immediately fell in love with not only its abilities from a hardware standpoint, but just this this attitude of being really the system for creative people, and I had already been very interested in making video games, and suddenly there were things like Deluxe Paint, and then later that other graphics program called Brilliance that was just absolutely fantastic. And I had already been honing my pixel art skills earlier on. It started with the Coleco Atom, which is a very obscure old system, and then the Commodore 64, and then finally the Amiga. And it was I spent years on the Amiga with Deluxe Paint and then Brilliance, and all of the skills that I developed to eventually get a job in the industry. I started my career as a pixel artist in the mobile game industry. It was just this really cool sort of renaissance, this new need for skillful pixel artists that had disappeared for many, many years after the 16-bit era ended and everything was 3D. Almost everything was 3D. Suddenly, pixel art was not in heavy demand. And then during the early years of mobile game development, suddenly they needed pixel artists again. And I had spent over a decade really honing my craft just because I love doing it. And I always wanted to make uh, 16-bit style games, even back when they weren't retro, even when that was the thing. And then I finally had a chance to um, to join the industry and make games similar to what I wanted to make. But my big dream was always to show what the Amiga specifically was capable of, because here I was sort of in the younger generation of hardcore Amiga fans. I was still in my teens when it was starting to just fall in sort of market and things like that. And so it had always frustrated me. I grew up with everything from, starting with the Atari 2600 up through arcades and 16-bit consoles. And it just really always frustrated me that while there were fantastic computer style games on the Amiga, things like Settlers by, I think, Blue Byte, and SimCity and all of those sorts of
Lemmings.
games. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yep.
Some fantastic games, but when it came to arcade style games and console style games, it was extremely rare that a game came out that really competed, not just in a sort of video and audio sense, but especially in gameplay and general sort of really taking the art form seriously and designing really great gameplay and really cool character designs and animations. It was just it bothered me even when ports of AAA games were made and sold for the Amiga. They they were not anywhere near the quality that I knew they could have been. So since I was about 14 years old, I've wanted to be able to really show what the Amiga could do, and it just I'm thrilled to finally the sort of uh, the planets aligned, as they say, and now it's finally happening, and I'm just thrilled to be part of it.
Mike, that's awesome. I'm looking at some of your work here now on the
Yeah.
Bitbeam Cameron website, and it's just gorgeous. I mean,
Yeah.
Family Guy is like one of my all-time favorite cartoons, one of my
Thanks.
all-time favorite shows. I love your acrylic paintings. My wife is also a painter, so this really hits home with me as well. And then here's some of the 3D. I'm assuming this is some of your 3D that you made for the mobile games. It's really, really, really top-notch work, and I love what you're
Thanks.
saying about like going back to the Amiga and like trying to see like what it's capable of, because now many of us who grew
Yeah.
up with Amiga, like myself, like we've
Mhm.
evolved, we've become like we've learned, we've honed our craft, we've become more advanced artists. So it's fun to like go back and
Right.
see like, okay, like what could have been done with this machine with what the knowledge we have now. So this is just
Right. Exactly.
this is just super exciting. Sanzian wants you to make a remake of Outrun. Well, Captain John's asking about your age, if it's okay to say, because you look like you're on the younger side. Like you said, you got into Amiga a little bit later.
Yeah.
Um,
I actually have what I like to call Ralph Macchio syndrome. Ralph Macchio from The Karate Kid. He's just an actor that always looked a lot younger than he really was. If I hadn't lost my hair, I'd really pass for much younger. But yeah, and I always forget. I'm either 44 or 45.
so I always forget
But
too. After 21, I just
yeah.
didn't even really count anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, it's I was born April 28th, 1974, so someone less distracted than me, go ahead and do the math. But yeah, it's Anyway, yeah, I mean, I was getting carded for rated R movies when I was in my mid to late 20s. So,
Awesome. Well, I tell you what, so many people can't wait to see the game. I just want to start playing the game, and we can keep talking
right.
while I play. So I'm going to
Sure.
fire up my Amiga here. I got a little special cropping there because Metro Siege doesn't take up the entire 4:3 ratio, so I got a little bit cropping
Right.
going on there. While we're loading it up, Roar, an amazing Amiga artist as well, he's asking, are you working in 16 or 32 color mode? I know you've got a lot to say about that. We're gonna Mike and I decided we're gonna start like more like a global vision of what he's got, and then we're gonna get more
Right.
into like some of the technical details. Mike's got some
Yeah.
amazing videos he's gonna show us as well. We're gonna play Metro Siege, but we're also gonna show some other demos from other projects, other games that Mike's working on and his team. And Mike's going to show us some more of the technical aspects of his game design a little bit later on the stream. But first, we're gonna start playing here. If I can switch, I got the new. I just for the stream, Mike. I completely revamped my streaming setup, so my muscle memory is a little bit off, but so far I'm digging it.
Yeah, no problem.
So Rora's asking, do you work in 16 or 32 color mode for this game?
Yeah, I can't wait to get really into the technical stuff. I love the talking about all that. It's the game thinks Metro Siege specifically thinks it's a 16 color game, so it thinks it's a single layer. I guess that's 4-bit plane, 16 color game, but we're using the repeating sprite trick to get that back parallax of that city skyline. And then to get even more parallax, we use the few leftover sprites to do those phone polls in the extreme foreground. It's an obsession of mine, which Alex, the programmer of Metro Siege, can tell you, and John as well. It drives me insane when a side-scrolling 16-bit game has no parallax. It just really irks me. For me, you really want that sense of depth when you look at the screen. It's more than just polish to me. It's something that any good quality side-scrolling 16-bit game should really have.
Well, Mike, that's a
So,
good point you bring up. And why
yeah.
don't you like explain your involvement in this game? And then there's other people involved in this game as well. As we know, it's a joint effort with Pixel Glass. So if you can just
Yes.
kind of introduce because some of the people who worked
Yeah,
on this
yeah.
game are known like in the community as well. And if you can just kind of say like,
Right.
what you did, what your part was, and what their parts were as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, actually, this could be a good time to let everyone know how this project came to be. And so I had made the mock-up, as you kind of saw in the little intro video there for my YouTube and Patreon channel. Over the years, decades now, I've been making mock-ups in my spare time of how Amiga games could look if the right team got together. And so I had these mock-ups kind of ready, and I would occasionally share them in the Amiga community. And then one day there was a Facebook post on a fairly popular Amiga Facebook group, and it was just this other person, and they made a post that basically said, "Hey, everyone in the Amiga community, if you could have a brand new high quality game for classic Amiga, what genre would you want?" And by the way, also the post said something along the lines of, if you're a skillful developer, an artist or a programmer, please contact me, and maybe there'll be an opportunity to make a new game. So I posted my art on those mock-ups, some of those mock-ups, in that thread. And what's interesting is I had a couple of conversations with the person that originally posted, but that kind of disappeared. That person kind of disappeared for a while, as often happens with potential projects and stuff like that. But in the meantime, John at Pixel Glass, the creators of the artist that was the co-creator of Worthy, he contacted me. He basically said, "I saw your stuff. It looks really good." I showed it to Alex, a programmer friend of his that had programmed Worthy, and basically he said something along the lines of, "Would you be interested in working on a full game? And if so, what genre of game would you like to do? What interests you most?" And so I mentioned several of my favorite genre, but I said specifically, out of all of them, like, I love side-scrolling platformers like Mario or more actiony ones like Mega Man type games. And I really love brawlers. It's my favorite genre. So I was thrilled when we all decided it was the right choice to go with that for our first project together. And then there were other things like shmups and sort of more sophisticated Metroidvania style side-scrolling game. You know, that whole thing where you're unlocking new areas of the map by acquiring new items that give you new powers and all that stuff. It's a genre I also love, but I basically said it was the type of game that has a higher development time, and especially at that point when we started this discussion, the brawler genre of games had really been neglected for years and years and years. There haven't been like really great original brawler games being released, so it seemed like and in my opinion, there's no really professional AAA quality brawler game yet in the Amiga library. So that made sense to us to be our first project.
That makes that's awesome, Mike. I mean, now here's just I am not a brawler guy. Like I think they're cool. I like them, but they're not like my go-to genre of game. But this game is so much fun. Like I love it so much. So you really knocked it out of the park. That even someone whose favorite genre is not brawlers can have a blast with it. Now this is also a 2-player game. Unfortunately,
Yes,
I don't have any friends here to play with.
But two player simultaneous, and as you can see, nice big characters on screen, all the parallax. And the combat system is very sophisticated. It's a little hard to tell in the video so far. And another thing to keep in mind: everything everyone is seeing right now is work in progress. And one of the biggest aspects that we've hardly even touched on yet is balancing the gameplay and finalizing everyone's moveset and the artificial intelligence and the enemies. And all of that. So we've been really working hard on benchmarking, establishing the engine, getting everything to work constantly. Alex has done an incredible job just getting in all these features that to most teams would be sort of pie in the sky. Like, you know, oh sure, if you want parallax, it's gonna have to be a 1-player game, or it's going to have less colors or whatever. And so Alex has just done an absolutely incredible job, just allowing us to get in all of the features. Like I said, this is my favorite genre, and so I'm pulling from. I grew up with an older brother, and we just loved playing these types of games together. So I'm pulling from all of the favorite aspects or favorite little bits of gameplay from all of the best 16-bit brawler games. So, like, there's, which is pretty rare in games like this, there's a block and counterattack system. And another thing that another Amiga community member mentioned and was hoping for, the ability to hit enemies while they're down. There's several ways to do that.
I'm kicking them while he's down right now. I kicked them right where it counts while he's down. I'm playing dirty here.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, this is, I mean, I'm just blown away by like how good the game looks. But, you know, there's a lot of games that look great, but they don't play great. But this game, it plays amazing. It feels just like a regular arcade game. I spend a lot of time in barcades, Mike, let me tell you.
Sure,
And this feels like a game that I could just like play in a barcade. But it turns out that it's Amiga 500 with 1 megabyte of RAM. Now, just to be clear, I'm not, two things I just want to clear up. I'm playing it on my Amiga 1200 right now. I don't have a PAL. I do have a PAL Amiga 500, but it's a little bit sick right now, so I'm playing it on my 1200. And you on the stream, you're seeing the stream at 30 frames per second, but the game is 50. I just don't broadcast at 60 FPS because of bandwidth issues. But there's some people are asking some great questions in the chat. I want to get to those. So if you guys want to ask a question in the chat, please just do @AmigaBill so I can see it. I'm not going to read all the chat. Because I'm trying to play and talk to Mike at the same time. But Mick Geezer, who's another, I'm sure you know who he is. He's another great programmer in the Amiga community. He did the Bomb Jack Beer Edition, and he's working on Rygar, which looks absolutely incredible right now. One of my favorite games. He's asking what the sprite sizes are and how many can it push at one time.
The game can run very smoothly. I should make a question before when runs with this. The game runs very, very smoothly and virtually never drops frames, but it is running at 25 frames per second at least for the overall screen update. But that's why it fooled you. If something is running at 25 frames per second and never frame skips, it's going to look very smooth, especially when it's not a game like a shmup that requires a lot of very fast-moving objects and stuff like that. So, but it runs very smoothly with virtually never a frame skip at 25 frames per second with 2 players simultaneous and four enemies on screen at the same time. And also you can see there's that trash can right there as a prop. So there can be a couple props on screen, 4 enemies and 2 players.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
I just want to mention. I know my friends. I know John is a member of the Greek Amiga Society, and I'm playing with the Greek stick. It's a great stick that the Vintage Computer Society of Athens is working on right now, and it's a blast for this game. It's got 2 buttons. The stick's got 2 buttons, and the game supports 2 buttons as well. You know, the main fire button is to punch or to kick, and then the other button is to jump. Yeah, Roar's saying it looks so polished already. He's ready. He looks ready to ship already.
I really appreciate that. I should also John, the artist that did Worthy, and the artist of Pixel Blast that basically made this whole thing a reality by seeing my art on there and introducing me and bringing me up to Alex, and he basically made this whole thing happen. And not only that, he just has done an incredible job turning the background graphics of my mock-up image into an actual optimized functioning tile map. And he's done the vast majority of effects. He helped to animate the 2 smaller enemies, and he's just also doing it's really, I could not be happier with the team of people that just got all together around making this project a reality.
So just to recap the team.
Yes.
So the team is you're Mike Parent from Bitbeam.
Right.
Corey Annis is your partner at Bitbeam, and he did some of the graphics as well. And of course, John, I call him Task. I know I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but John from Pixel Glass, also of Worthy fame. He did, if I'm not mistaken, some of the coding.
Alex
Brown, Alpine 9000. Alex Brown was the main coder. Got you. So it's a team of 4 people that made this.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, and I'm pretty sure this is correct, Alex has done 100% of the coding, unless he's gotten little bits of help somewhere that I don't know about. For all intents and purposes, he is the coder, and he's been doing an amazing job. John has done an incredible job getting, like I said, the background from the mock-up turned into actual working video game graphics as tiles that need to be very optimized to save on memory. And like I said, he did background effects, pickup items, a lot of that kind of stuff. So you could call me like the lead artist and sort of director of the game, and that it's based on my original concept and art style, and I'm kind of art directing as we go. And Corey I sort of pulled him into the project later on. What he's done so far is, if you saw that bigger enemy with the striped shirt, that's called Mule in the game. That was just a 1-frame mock-up image, and he broke it all down and animated it so that we could get it in the game in time for this very premiere on your stream here. So, but Corey is going to, go ahead.
So this is, I'm kind of stuck here. I guess this is the end of the demo, right? This is, what we're seeing here is just a demo mock-up of the game. It's kind of far from being released. So I think I just played through the demo. Is that correct, Mike? Yeah. Cool.
Yes.
So Jamie Morgan has a great question, but it's probably jumping a little bit ahead to the future. He wants to know if there's going to be a physical boxed version of the game, which is a great question. But before you answer that question, I've got a question. How do I reset to play again? Do I just have to reboot the computer?
Hopefully Alex is in there. That's a great question. I didn't see.
I can just reboot. It's no problem. But what I have up on the screen right now, Mike, is the directions. And now the thing that's really incredible are the amount of like different attacks and moves that you can
absolutely,
do.
yeah.
I'm still learning the game myself. There's so much to it.
Right.
It's pretty awesome. I love it.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my
Roar
go ahead.
saying that he's still blown away. I have to keep reminding himself that's OCS. Like it feels like AGA. And I think
Yeah, that was the goal. Yeah. Yeah.
Comatron, what's up, dude? Great to see you. Amix312 is asking a great question. Is there going to be an AGA version of the game, or is this it?
I assume this game will certainly be able to systems.
1 second, Mike, you dropped out right there. So Nebula Designs. Let me just correct myself really quick.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for the follows. Nebula Designs got a great question. I did say the game's at 50 frames per second, but streaming at 30. That's incorrect. The game is 25 frames per second game. There was another game that you were working on that I think was 50, and that's where I got confused. So, but my apologies. I did say it was 50, and not 50. The game is 25 frames per second.
Right.
Press Q or escape. Okay, let's see. Let me go back to the game. Where is it? Boom, boom, boom. I've got a lot of scenes, a lot of scenes set up here. Thank you everyone for all the follows. Let's see. Press Q. Okay, great. Q did the trick. Thanks, Alpine 9000. Appreciate that. So I see. Yeah. Hi, babe. What's that? Oh, my wife. Cheers, Mike. This is good timing. My wife just got home from work and she gave me a cold, Żywiec beer. Oh yeah, that's right. She was at a friend's house. From made in Poland. So I'm gonna have a drink to celebrate you and all the amazing people in the Amiga community. I'm not gonna finish it though because I need to stay somewhat coherent. There's gonna be a long stream and this is a lot of beer. So cheers, cheers, Mike. Thanks so much for coming on the stream today. Yeah. Thanks to you and your team for making this awesome game. Thanks for your amazing vision of the future of Amiga gaming, and thanks to everyone for hanging out today in chat. This is awesome day. So, yeah, Amiga DJ, I need to dial that in. I don't know why. I know the file sound is loud. I need to work on that. But I might be able to if I take a break. I might be able to do that. But I'll do that at some point. So I'm here in the game. I see there's two different characters. There's Alex and Kim, and they both have different abilities, different characteristics, and different special moves, as we were seeing in that move list.
Right. And I just realize we haven't fully answered the previous question, how big are the character sprites and things like that.
Go for it.
Yeah, I don't remember exact sizes, but they are virtually identical to the sort of pixel-wise, the character scale of a game like Streets of Rage 2. So not quite as big as the characters in Final Fight, but also not anywhere near as small as characters in a game like Double Dragon or Streets of Rage 1. So they're nearly identical relative to the overall screen size and just in general pixel dimensions. They're nearly identical in size to Streets of Rage 2 characters, which I think is a really nice balance of having enough screen real estate to move around, and the gameplay design is going to have a lot to do with what I call crowd control. You want enough room to maneuver around and to have enemies coming from either side of you, and you can have one character trying to sneak up behind you, and you have a back attack, and then the third character that's unlockable that is not yet revealed, his back attack, he'll just automatically swing behind him, and if it makes contact with an enemy, he'll just automatically throw him over his shoulder, so that if there's enemies coming at you from the front while you're dealing with someone behind you, you'll just throw that enemy right into the other ones and knock them down or back as well. And like I said, there is blocking and counterattacking in this. So
yes, I put up my block there. That was awesome. Kim is badass, man. I think she's OP.
Thanks.
I love her weapons, and the block is super cool.
Yeah, well, don't forget, this is the first demo version of the first level. The enemies are going to end up much smarter and tougher, and enemies will also be able to do things like block and counterattack eventually. So there's no real strong gameplay balance, and we made sure for now that it's much better for it to be too easy right now than too hard until we really balance everything. It's just easier to playtest a level over and over again if you're not getting your butt kicked.
Well done. I have a great question here because I'm kind of wondering the same
Yep.
thing too. What language was this programmed in? Because it's so smooth and so like,
Yeah.
but it plays so well. I'm just blown away by like how the quality of the graphics and the quality of the gameplay are just like stunning, Mike. Incredible. What was it programmed in?
Alex just answered mainly C, but some assembly. So to me, that is the perfect combination for game production, because while theoretically a game done 100% in assembly would be the fastest for performance, it's by no means the fastest for development. So the perfect balance is working in C, and then as you find the need, you can further optimize it with assembly. And so that tends to give you the best of both worlds, because if you're working purely in assembly from scratch, things can take so much longer that you end up not having as much time to refine and to think about ways you are going to optimize. So in the long run, you can usually end up with a higher quality game faster if you actually start working with C, and then, just as Alex did, optimize after the fact, once you have everything as optimized as it can be, and once the engine is much more sort of solidified in its features and things like that. So yes, it's C and assembly.
That's awesome. You know, Mike, I really wish I was more educated when it came to game design, so I could talk to you more intelligently. But that makes a lot of sense to me. It's kind of like taking using the tools for their taking the best parts of each tool and putting them together to make something that just works great. Because like here's the thing, like I'll never forget when I was a kid and like Shadow of the Beast came out. I was like, oh my god, like this game is amazing. I absolutely love the game. The graphics and sound and music were just like stunning. Gameplay was manageable. You know what I mean? Like it was, I didn't dislike it as much as other people did, but it was hard, and the skill, the difficulty was extremely difficult. It was almost like in some ways almost like a demo, and there was almost like a tech demo, and there were other like classic Amiga games that I still love to this day, but sometimes they're a little bit more on the splash, the visual side, than the actual great playability. But what I'm seeing here is like stunning graphics, and I wish everyone here could play it because it plays so well. Like I'm just blown away. And yeah, it is like Mike said, it is a little bit on the easy side on purpose. Like he's gonna dial in they're gonna dial in the artificial intelligence. I love how you can like interact. I just hit that and I picked up Coke. No, I picked up a beer. Let's see. There's some more questions here. I just gotta beat these guys up. Yep. I'm just blown away by this, Mike. Congratulations to you and your team. This is awesome. Oh, good question. Amix312. Oh, look at this. So that's tricky. When I know when I get caught in the bear hug, you have to alternate between button 1 and button 2, and I know you said you want to fix that so you just go left and right on the stick, and I think that would be cool.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. That's we're assuming lots of different people will have different input devices. It was very important. I mentioned this very early on when we were discussing whether or not we were going to get together and collaborate on this game. And I said, and they agreed immediately. So it's not like I was coming from some kind of elitist standpoint. We're all in agreement. We're going to go for an absolute AAA quality game, what the Amiga has deserved for a long time in a brawler. And because of that, it was all about the standards and making sure that it was competitive in every way with any 16-bit arcade or console brawler game. And a huge part of that, of course, is gameplay. This was not going to be just an art demo or a tech demo. And because of that, we just agreed very early on. We were not going to sort of compromise and cobble the quality of gameplay design to be enslaved to the notion that we had to support one-button joysticks. So that's something that a lot of games suffered from, including ports of AAA games like Final Fight. So it was really important that we designed the gameplay based on at least 2-button controllers. We plan to support 3 buttons and a pause button. So if you have any kind of like CD32 or any compatible multi-button controller on the Amiga, it'll support up to 4 buttons, one of them being pause, the other 3 all being to control the actual action of the character. But by default, and right now, it supports 2 buttons. And then there will definitely be options for people with 1-button controllers, which, in my opinion, the ideal option in that case is actually to use the keyboard for 2 or 3 buttons, just like if you're in an arcade.
Oh, wow.
Like, there's a lot of ways you can sort of suction cup or stick your joystick down near the side of your keyboard, and then that way you can use, it becomes like your desk is like an arcade cabinet at that point, and you're using the joystick to control and keyboard buttons for the action buttons.
That's
so
cool.
At the very least, yeah,
that's pretty amazing. For me personally, I like to hold the stick in my hand, so that would that could be a little tricky, but that's a great option. You really like thought out all the possibilities well. Just a quick. I was able to mute my follow sound, so I apologize for that. This is day 1 of my streams on my new streaming software and hardware, so I apologize for that. But thank you everyone who's following. I appreciate that very, very much. Mickey User's got a great question. Are there any? Yes. Oh, and so does Amix. Well, I'll start with Amix because he came first. Will there be like a version for next gen Amigas like OS4 or MorphOX?
That's a really good question. I would stay tuned, and maybe Alex, also known as Alpine 9000, will have some kind of opinion on that, but or insight into what platforms this is going to become available on. But the game will be available on many modern platforms, so there's certainly a good chance. And then I just lost my train of thought.
Oh, no worries.
But
well, I want to get into that in a little while about the modern platforms and the Amiga games being on modern platforms, which is super exciting. We're gonna get into that, but I don't want to.
That's why I.
That's
why I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no, I know. I can see you getting excited about that because every time I talk to you, So anyway, but McGeezer's got a great question too. Are there any copper color tricks being used to get more colors? Because a lot of copper tricks. Okay.
Yeah, this game thinks it's 16 colors. The characters and the background, or I should say the foreground, the stone wall, the fence, the buildings, the doors, windows. That's all the same 15 color indices. And then you have the 1 color index for the background sky color, basically, and the buildings back there, the skyline, that's 3 color sprites that are being repeated using that repeating sprite trick. And then, so there's a lot of copper going on, changing 2 or 3 color indices in the background to make the background much more arcade quality, much smoother gradations, much more variety of color. You'll notice it's not the same types of shades of gray. We were really obsessive about getting, while keeping it subtle. That was a big mistake a lot of people make on the Amiga when they use the copper to get more colors on screen. They're tempted to use the sort of rainbow method, where if you're going to make your game look more colorful, make it really obvious you're adding more color to the screen, so that there were very often Amiga games will have really, really overly bright rainbow style background skies and stuff like that. And subtlety goes a long way. So you can see our sky gradient back there. It's super there, natural. But it's a nice, subtle, natural gradient, and that really helps keep the background atmospheric and in the background, and you get that really nice sense of depth, which is really it's another obsession of mine as a visual artist, as a 2D artist, creating that illusion of depth in a flat screen. And
that is the key. When I do my work, cinematography, that's half cinematography, is trying to create depth on a flat screen. So I love how you have like the post in the foreground, and then you have all these different layers of scrolling. I just want to say, John is saying that I can bring in the second player by pressing K, and then assign him AI by pressing B. I've been trying, John. I haven't been able to get that to work.
You might have to click back in the emulator window.
There's no emulation happening here, Mike. Let me show you.
Oh, it's the real Amiga.
Oh, Amiga Bill. Awesome. I mean, I love emulation. Don't get me wrong, but no, I'm using my Amiga 1200 here. Let's see. Let me scroll down here.
That's awesome.
Let's see. There we go. This is my Amiga 1200 I'm playing on right now. But this game does work on an Amiga 500 with 1 megabyte of RAM, which is crazy. But yeah, I got my Amiga 1200 rocking this, and this is actually an NTSC 1200 that I'm running in PAL mode right now.
Do you have a second controller plugged in? Maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's waiting for actual controller input for the second character.
No, I've got the Greek stick plugged into port
Right.
2, and then I've got my mouse plugged into the mouse port.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure then, but usually yes, you can bring up the second player, Kim, at any point by pressing K, and then Alex has done an incredible job already, but we're not positive yet. It'll be a gameplay feature, but we definitely want it to be, where even if you're playing as one player, you can set second player to be controlled by AI and go through the whole game with a AI controlled second player.
Oh, that's
So,
amazing. George,
it's
Amiga.
looking promising. Yeah.
That's wow. I mean, that's pretty ambitious. That's incredible. George is saying you could always have 2 difficulty levels going back to the difficulty. That's an interesting idea.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something that that we have in mind. Right now, obviously the big thing is get the full game finished with the 3 characters. And by the way, that third character that will be unlockable, that character is already every bit as complete and finished as the other 2 characters. We just have them locked right now because it's that third character you'll actually earn by beating the game through the first time.
Very cool.
So
very cool.
we don't want to sort of spoil the surprise of who the third character is and what their gameplay style is, because that's going to increase the replayability of the game. Even is the fact that once you make it through the game, you'll have this whole other character with a very different fighting style from these 2, who already are very different from each other.
Very different. Yeah, well, we'll have to
yeah.
find out when we do our big reveal stream, Mike, when the game is ready to ship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean the characters do play very different. And I love how the enemies interact with each other. How you can throw one enemy into another.
Yes.
And it just feels very real. Camille's asking which C compiler was used on this.
I'll leave that one for Alex to answer in the chat. I'm not sure.
No problem.
But,
And then
yep.
sorry, if you, Roar is asking a great question. He's like, so like using the copper trick, like about how many colors are on the screen? Because I know Roar loves Lionheart, and Lionheart is one of my favorite games too. I think it's one of the most incredible OCS games on Amiga.
Right.
And that game it looks like an AGA game as well.
Right.
So about how many colors like are on the screen?
I think John counted. I have not, and I remember it was around 60, a little over 60 colors on screen. But keep in mind, we're not going for a specific number. It's not about numbers impressing you on paper. Right. It's about how good does the game look or play.
That's the most.
And
that's the best. That's the best.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've taken some of my photos and I've converted them to like 16 color, just regular old 16 color Amiga mode with some dithering.
Right.
Like it's all you need, sometimes if you have the right colors. And I just love the fact that you guys don't care about all the background stuff and the technical stuff. You just want to make a great game that's like fun to play and looks amazing. And you've done it.
We don't care about bragging from a technical standpoint. I think that was a part of the problem for even a lot of the very impressive Amiga games, like you mentioned, Shadow of the Beast. I really got the feeling as a console game fan growing up loving the Amiga that the attitude of even the best game developers, most of them on the Amiga, was sort of programming's cool, the Amiga's cool, the Amiga hardware's cool, so I'm going to make a game because that'll be cool and I'll show off the Amiga. But almost none of that equation and that passion was for the art of gameplay design. So you ended up with games that were very unoriginal in gameplay. And then where you had these sort of tropes that will just irk most console gamers. Like in a platformer side-scroller style game, your enemy should never be drops of water. Drips of water from the ceiling, that should not be what kills this badass warrior. So it's all about, we don't care about bragging about technical things, but we're obsessed with those technical things because we love the challenge of working within and around technical constraints just to make the most badass game we can. But it's all about the game should speak for itself. It's not about the number of colors. It's about when you look at it, does it make you go, wow, that's beautiful? And does it make you go, wow, that reminds me of the best console and arcade games that I played during the 16-bit era? So that's our sort of mindset. We could throw more colors on the screen, but like I said, or we could make it more obvious how many colors are on screen, but that would make the game look worse. So it's all about. I think the best example I could come up with for a game that was a technical tour de force, just absolutely stunning from a technical standpoint, was the Jim Power on Mutant Planet, I think it's called.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely an
yeah.
amazing, amazing technical game. I watch long plays of that game to this day. For one, it's fantastic, but from a technical standpoint, I watched that game and I drool of, man, if I could have been uh, on that team, you know what I mean, working on that game. If I
What you
could
could
have
have
been
done, yes.
the lead artist on that game with using those exact same that engine and those technical constraints, that game could have made the Amiga look drastically more powerful than the Mega Drive to most people.
And
But you really need to really care and be obsessive about overcoming the specific technical constraints or working within them. And sometimes otherwise AAA quality games like Mr. Nuts, that's a great example of an insanely close to console quality game. Obviously the team was top notch, but the one thing that took that game just slightly down from being Mega Drive quality was they made it almost exactly like it was a Mega Drive game, meaning they used standard Amiga dual playfield mode, which forced just basically 7 colors for the background and 7 colors for the foreground, and all the enemies, pickups, explosions, and everything had to be done with those 7 colors.
wow.
So because they used those technical constraints, this otherwise beautifully done game that looks identical to the way it would have looked on a Mega Drive, in the case of the enemies and the explosions and they didn't pop out well from the foreground because they were using the same 7 colors, and that just really it was so close to AAA quality, that it was but it is
Mike,
it's
I'm so
yep, go ahead.
excited because thank you Alpine 9000. I added the second character, and she's the AI. It's really really amazing to see this with like two players. This is incredible. And Vulture is asking another good question about the difficulty levels. He's saying maybe it would be cool to have like a super hard level at different difficulties for different level of gamers. And I'm so excited. I can't contain myself. I love what you're saying about the gameplay because I'm a visual guy myself. I anything that looks beautiful I respond to, but the games I go back to are the ones that play well. Like I will fire up a game that looks great and I'll just be dazzled by it and I'll love the visuals. But then after, I'll boot it up maybe like once every couple months just to check it out. But games that are great to play, regardless of how they look, are the ones that I keep going back to. But anyway, back to the difficulty question.
Yeah. So we definitely have that planned. But what I was going to say before and kind of sidetracked myself was goal number 1: get all the levels done, get all the bosses done, all the variation, make sure the gameplay is just rock solid and very competitive with all of the best arcade and 16-bit games. And then we'll find that balance and figure out what are the most important features to add on top of that polished core of the game before we release the game. But very high on that list will be things like difficulty level settings. It's not
That's
something
awesome.
So it's, I mean, keep in mind, everyone, we are going. This game should stand up perfectly well to the highest quality arcade and console games of the same genre. So if there's a sort of core feature of those sorts of games, it's not that likely this game will lack it. There will be some things based on sort of personal taste, sort of my vision of the game. Like some of the games go really over the top with certain gameplay situations and stuff like that. So I'm still undecided if there will be like characters running around spraying machine gun fire at the players. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm kind of iffy about that just from a vision and design standpoint. Same thing with throwing grenades. So there might be some things you see in a lot of games that aren't in there, but like we do from sort of creative choice. But keep in mind also, everyone. I saw someone else in the chat mention.
Yeah, I'm behind on the questions. I gotta catch up.
Yeah. Someone mentioned Golden Axe. Corey and I are extremely excited about eventually using this same code and making a Golden Axe meets Altered Beast game built upon the same engine.
That would be
So
amazing.
yeah, think of this game as step one, or even there's several other things happening simultaneous to this that we're going to go into soon.
Well, actually,
That
maybe we should get into some of that. We've been playing the game for a minute. I'm kind of hooked. Camel's saying, are the characters Bob's or are they made of sprites? And what's up, Miss
they are-
DK? Miss DK, thank you for the raid.
Right.
I appreciate that. Greetings to Denmark. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so everything is Bob's except for the background skyline, which is made out of repeating sprites, and the phone pole that's in front of everything else. Everything else, the foreground graphics and the players, and like any enemies and pickups and all that stuff, that's all the same 16 color graphics. The game thinks it's a 16 color game. But the total number of colors is over 60 in general.
I think you answered Amiga DJ's question about there being weapons in the game. You're considering it. Don't.
Yeah,
Don't.
we're undecided.
Undecided. Okay.
Yeah, we're undecided. Like, it always, to me, if I literally, and I did this a lot, working on this game and conceptualizing it for years. Like I said, this is my favorite genre. Of all the games I ever played in this genre, whenever I listed the top 10 really fun experiences, like really viscerally rewarding gameplay elements, in all of like my top, we'll say my top 6 brawler games, weapons was never on that top 10 list of real fun things.
You want to fight, man. You want to use your fists, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like when as soon set gets
Mike,
reduced,
sorry you dropped out there.
I will temporarily close the screen.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So,
yeah, you're good. You're good.
Just to free up some bandwidth. Okay. So anyway, my point was, in general, not only would there be a much larger investment time in coding, debugging, memory management, like we're doing everything we can to fit the most important, most fun things in this 1 meg we have to work with. So if we have to make a choice between giving the players enough moves in general for real combat so that it's really rewarding and so every player can play with their own style, like that's one of the things I love about Streets of Rage 2, is you have just enough moves for the playable characters where not only can each person play with their own style, but you can literally decide arbitrarily after you've played the game in each main game many times. You can decide, I'm going to give myself a new challenge. I'm going to fight with a different style of fighting. I'm going to use this or that move more. And that, to me, that sort of longevity and replay value is way more important to me than pickup weapons, which can be good and can be fun and can change up the gameplay a bit. But like I said, it's all about finding those balance. What's more important? What gives more players more like real visceral enjoyment? And to me, in a brawler, it's beating the crap out of people and throwing them into each other, hitting them while they're down.
And doing it with style. And varieties of style, yeah.
Being able to choose the style that you play with, to me, that's always on the top of the list. As is like hitting enemies while they're down. And one thing that none of the games really had, until you go into much more obscure games like Knights of the Round. And even most people that play Knights of the Round, which was a Capcom game, a little bit like Dungeons and Dragons or Golden Axe. But that game had a really cool blocking and counterattacking system in it, but that was one of very few brawler games that have that, and that's something that I really felt should have been where brawler games should have continued from if they didn't sort of abandon the genre. 3D games, there was so many more cool things that could have been done with 2D games and with each 2D genre, but especially brawling games. But they kind of just there were so many brawler games in a short span of time during the 16-bit era that they just sort of thought, oh, everyone's tired of it, and maybe everyone for a year or two, but they stopped making them for like 15 years or something. And so much more really cool stuff could have been done with it, and that's sort of what this game is. We want it to feel right at home, and I think I said this in that little promo video But to just, if not, or to just really bring that point across, what we want to do at Bitbeam Canon, Corey and I, like our biggest motivation is to create that sense of nostalgia, but not like the problem with being a retro game player and nostalgia is you enjoy it and it brings back great memories and feelings, but you've seen and played these games a million times before now. So even though you still love the games and you have that nostalgic feeling, it's not going to surprise you. There's none of that excitement of it being new. So the feeling I described when I'm explaining our motivation is, imagine you wake up in an alternate dimension where suddenly the 16-bit consoles are different and every AAA studio is making just as high quality games, but they're totally new franchises you've never played before.
It's like,
so
it's like warping back into time, essentially.
Yeah, but like to a parallel universe where everything like it's like instead of Mega Man, there's a like Mega Man, but with just enough difference to the gameplay and the art and the music that it's just as high quality, but you have not only that perfect nostalgic feeling, but it's new and exciting. It really yeah, so that's our goal, and that's one of our big one of my many big motivations for making Metro Siege is very familiar, very comfortable, but with that excitement that you had back in the day when you went to the arcade and there was a new Sega or Capcom arcade cabinet of a game you never saw or played before. So that's
amazing.
what we're going for. It's just always putting a new spin on something. You're going to see very intentional all of the levels to be like our take on some of the most memorable levels and best moments from Final Fight and Streets of Rage 2 and things like that.
It's amazing.
It's like a nostalgia plus. It's like new nostalgia.
New
That's
nostalgia. It brings you back to everything you're familiar with, but then it adds in a lot of new surprises as well, new things to be excited about.
It keeps it exciting,
right?
Like it used to be.
There's no friendly fire in this one, Harry Longbone. Sorry, is there gonna be friendly fire?
There is, and there might be specifically an option to turn it on right now. I think personally, like, as a big fan of the genre, what I think should be the default and will probably be the default is if you are throwing a jab. I can't see myself on my tiny thumbnail. Okay, so I turned off the stream to make sure I don't robot out or anything. But so if you throw a jab, even if your friend is there in a crowd of people, the odds of you hitting your friend with a jab are astronomically low. Your fist is not 6 feet wide. And I don't know how that is metric. Sorry, most of the watchers are probably European. My apologies. But your fist is not incredibly wide, and you have accurate control when you're throwing a punch. But on the other hand, when you're throwing one of the bad guys across the screen, that should be able to hit your partner.
Right.
So it's that sensible friendly fire.
And
you don't walk up to help your friend and go to punch the guy that's holding him and punch your friend in the face if the enemy didn't like intentionally use your friend as a shield. So it's that sort of sensibility. Yep, go ahead. Is everything good on your end?
Everything sounds great. Thank you for the follow. Yeah, no, thanks. That might, and that also makes the game like substantially more realistic and gives it a lot more depth.
Right.
Damien D, what's up? Damien D from English Amiga Board, great to see you. He's asking, is there going to be like an approximate price on the game? And guys, if you want to ask a question, please do that at Amiga Bill. It makes it a little bit easier for me to see it. And I'm trying to keep up. I'm so excited. There's so many good questions.
Yeah, that does remind me. A really important question was asked. We did not answer, which is, or I don't think we did. I don't remember answering it. Will there be a boxed version?
Oh, did we answer that? I don't think so.
We are huge. I think we all agree. I think Bitbeam Canon for sure, but I'm almost certain that Alex and John feel the same way. We're really big on the nostalgia and the entire experience of getting a new game. And that very much includes getting the box. As you saw, and as you showed, I'm a fine art painter, and I've been a professional illustrator in the past as well. So we are certainly going to design a new box, and it will take some kind of the universe will have to be completely conspiring against us for there to not be a boxed version of the game. But even if, which is astronomically low odds, somehow for some reason we can't do that, but I really can't imagine why not. there will at least be a virtual boxed version of the game with the full box art, with the manual, and everything like that. So I'm going to hand paint an actual box art, nice large canvas painting with acrylic, extremely similar to the AAA quality box art that you're used to from the 16-bit and arcade days. I'm even going to intentionally match that style to quite a degree. And then the box itself, the goal certainly is to have not just the box and a manual, but swag, like a fold-out
You got the T-shirt, like Shadow of the Beast, man. I wish I had my Shadow of the Beast T-shirt. I'd be able to retire.
Right.
But
so,
I love the box versions. You know, I think it's great to have both options because not everyone wants the box version. But personally, I love the box versions. And there have been some really gorgeous boxed games coming out for Amiga recently. Like the Reshooter has got a great box version. The guys from RGCD, oh my god, like Tiger Claw is like one of the best box games I've ever had. And I just love having like that up on the shelf. So physical media is a lost art form, especially today with things like Steam and whatnot. It's just so great to have the physical media.
So let's put it this way. We all want to do it very much. Pixel Glass did it with Worthy very recently.
Yes.
So we have the connections, we have the know-how, so theoretically it all boils down to feedback and support and how many people are going to buy the boxed version of the game. And given feedback so far, so long as we don't drop the ball and disappoint everyone by somehow going off on a tangent and turning this great demo that everyone likes into a bad game, so long as that doesn't happen, which we're all dead set on making sure that doesn't happen, right? So, yes, we are definitely shooting for both a downloadable version of the game and a box version, and also, like I said, the game will also be available for modern devices as well. So
that's so cool, and I think that's such a great. I mean, I want to get into some of the other stuff as well, but so many people, so many good questions. It would be so great, like, because this game is good enough quality to be like a retro style game on Steam. Like it plays that well. Like I play a lot of games. I get a lot of games on Steam or whatever for my PC that are like retro style, but they clearly would never run on a real retro system. And this is so cool that like you can actually have a game of this quality that originates on the Amiga, but you can play on a modern PC like on Steam. I think it's gonna like maybe some kid's gonna like download it and be like, hey, this is a great game. Oh wait, this is an Amiga game? Like what's this Amiga? You know, like let me look into this. This is pretty awesome, and it might bring some new people into the community as well.
Exactly. That is a big part of what I wanted to talk about tonight. Beyond Metro Siege, when we get into the other projects I'm working on, there has been, and you can tell, very briefly, the whole Amiga community can tell something is happening. Something changed in the last few years. There's a renaissance happening in classic Amiga game development. And what people are experiencing and witnessing right now, even with Siege, is like the tip of the iceberg of what can happen and what likely will happen if we keep up this level of enthusiasm and dedication. And one of the paradigm shifts that can make literally more high quality games can be made for the Amiga in the near future and over the next many years than happened during the heyday of the Amiga before it became an obsolete system. And one of the giant paradigm shifts that happened, there's two really important ones. One, retro is huge now, far outside the Amiga community. So if you make a high quality retro game that isn't just retro style, but legitimate retro that runs on a 30-year-old system, it doesn't matter what that 30-year-old system is, and if half the people or most people never heard of that system before, the fact that it is legitimately retro is actually a good thing for marketing now. It's bragging rights. So that's a massive shift. And then the other thing is just lost my train of thought again for a second. So always before, the attitude sort of had to be, even very creative, very passionate people in the Amiga community that wanted to make a new Amiga game, they had to be very guarded about it and really limit their own expectations. And they had to say, well, it's an Amiga game, it's never going to make money, it's never going to be able to make back the time I spend making it, so it's just going to be a labor of love, it's just going to be a hobby. So, that kind of attitude, which was very necessary for decades now, there's been a massive paradigm shift that most people don't even realize yet. And that is now there are very proven ways, and this is partly very recent with the introduction only a few years back, I think, of the open source. I think it's called Aros, the open
Aros.
source like Kickstarters equivalents.
Wait, Aros, you mean the language? I mean the
No,
the
I
operating system?
I might be using the wrong term, but there's there's an open source version of the ROMs.
Oh,
Like it
oh,
replaces
Aros.
the ROMs.
Got you.
Right?
Yeah, yes.
So, and the emulators are rock solid. They work on every modern platform and they're open source. So that's one way that someone that just wants to make a really high quality retro, you are not limited to the Amiga community as potential customers, right? So you can make a game that as bragging rights, and for someone like me that loves the Amiga and wanted to prove the Amiga can do for decades, I'm going to make Amiga games anyway, no matter what. Whether or not, like, it won't even matter. It wouldn't even matter to me how much money Metro Siege made. I want to keep making them. But you know what I mean? Not everyone is going to be like that. But the point is, we have an opportunity as the Amiga community to change the paradigm and say, we're a supportive community, we're a community, and if we attract other very high-level developers, pixel artists, game designers to this platform, is just, hey, look, if you want to make a retro game, don't just make it retro style. We'll help you make it legit retro. You'll have bragging. If the community helps in the right way, they might be able to make the game faster than if they were making it fake retro to run on modern platforms. But they get the best of both worlds. They have a legit retro game that they can sell in all the major markets still. So that's just a massive shift in the potential payback, so to speak, or return on the investment for making really high quality games.
Well, it makes
And
it makes it, you know,
yeah.
a financially viable product at that point.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I'm just trying to keep. There's so many great questions. Camille, Camille's asking a great question. I want to get to it, but I think it will be a little bit later on when we talk a little bit more about the future. He's asking about, are you going to offer your tools and the engine to other developers to make games quicker? Do you want to answer that now, or yeah? And then other people are asking about the music and the sound in the game as well.
Yes. So far, everything you hear in the John at Pixel Glass, who's I think doing a fantastic job, especially since he's wearing multiple hats. He's done the I think the bulk of the work with PR right now. You know, a giant amount of the graphics work, and he also did the one song that's in the game so far, which he probably would want me to mention that this is not the latest version of the song he made. It didn't quite make it into the playable demo in time for this live stream. So an even better version of this song is ready to go into the game. And I think he's doing a great job. The thing he had the least amount of time for so far was to really perfect the sound effects and to make sure there's a full sort of suite of sound effects that fit in memory along with the music and everything else. So so far it is John has done all of it, but he would want me to remind you everything so far is work in progress.
Sure.
So it's only going to get better from here. And I mentioned this to you, I think yesterday we had a very brief chat, but yeah, there's a massive. You'd be amazed what a massive difference to the overall polish and the perceived quality of a game happens in the last minute sort of polishing phase. Where right now, everything you see in this game right now, we've been in a rush to figure out what the sizes of the characters and the environment need to be, to constantly do this balancing act of, okay, how much more memory can we spend on graphics versus sound, and finding the right balance. So we've done almost no real polish work right now. And even though we've got the game looking quite nice, you'd be amazed what a difference it makes just when we have the time to sit down and perfect the timing of each frame of each animation, especially in a combat game where you have, you know, this isn't these animation terms, but there's anticipation. Like if someone's going to throw a punch, they have to pull their fist back and lean backward. That's the anticipation. and then there's the actual movement, and then there's follow through where they don't just immediately teleport back to an idle pose after the punch, the swing is finished or the punch makes contact. So tweaking those, making sure that the anticipation and the follow through are just long enough to really get that sensation, to reinforce visually, to really give you time as a player to appreciate that contact, what is about to happen, and then what just happened. That can make an animation and the gameplay itself look and feel 10 times better. And it's so much faster work, but it's work that happens near the end of a game's production.
Well, speaking, yeah, it makes it much more realistic. And speaking of the game's production and the schedule, I know lots of folks are asking, like, do you have a timetable for the game? You know, is it we're seeing this great demo now, but you know, when do you anticipate it could potentially be available?
So right now, it's always really an ambitious
One
project.
second, Mike. You dropped out there for.
Oh, all right. I'm trying
good.
again. Am I good?
You're good.
Okay. So it's always dangerous with a really complex project, a very ambitious project like this, to try to give an accurate estimate, as I'm sure everyone in any software and game community knows, or just software in general. But to make matters worse, all of us have day jobs that we need to pay the bills and stuff. So there can be massive fluctuations with how much free time per day, per week, per month we all have to work on it. So we've made very good progress so far, but realistically, with the current rate of development, I'm just going to completely ballpark guess something in the area of a year. But that could drastically change depending on many things, including not to shill for money, but when we get to the point, I do have the Patreon channel, and I'm trying to find as many alternate sources of income as possible. The better they do, the less hours I have to work for my day job, the faster the game will get designed and all the graphics will be done. And eventually we'll reach a point where we could potentially do a Kickstarter or just pre-orders or something like that. So that's definitely something we will look into. But, for the next probably at least month or so, we're going to gauge reaction. We're going to see how much progress we can continue to make, and see where things go from there. But we're making really good progress regardless of all our day job, and we are very dedicated. As soon as we can, on the Bit Being Canon side, we're trying to get to the point where we can focus most of our quote-unquote free time outside of our day jobs on specifically Metro Siege, to just get it to as amazing quality as possible and finished as quickly as possible.
Well,
there are too many things, too many caveats.
It's a good balance. It's kind of like, the analogies in like my film business, like when you're editing, right? It's like you need to spend the time to get it right, and you can't put out a bad product. But at the same time, there comes a point of diminishing return when it's time to release it. So that's cool. Let me let's see. Do you have a plan for like how many like levels there's gonna be?
No, not specifically. Like I mentioned before, it's really important that the game really is, in as many ways as possible, on par or better with the classic games of the same genre. So it won't surprise you by having way more levels. I don't think it's better, but it also won't have less levels than the average. That's a really big mistake that people make in game development. And like I mentioned to you before, we have our Bit Being Canon has our own YouTube channel, and we really want to, as much as possible, help retro game developers, and especially Amiga game developers. Corey and I are both more than 10-year veterans. We've got, like, between us, probably in the area of 30 to 40 published games under our belts. And in those decade plus in the professional industry, we learned a lot of critically important systems, literal systems, and sort of frames of mind and approaches and workflows to ensure that projects get done as close to on time and on budget as possible, to not have what's called feature creep, to make your projects as close to flake proof as possible when you're working online with people all over the world. And we are going to be doing more and more videos explaining all of that, those sort of things, to hopefully encourage and empower everyone that is even thinking about making an Amiga game to make them really feel much more secure in taking on such an endeavor, seeking out people to collaborate with. We're going to cover really that topic. A huge part of why this game is a reality and looking so good is that everyone involved is has such a tempered and professional attitude going into this project. Like, one of the core principles, none of us have our ego in this game in a negative way. It's all about, we all just love the Amiga and want to make the most amazing game we can. And we all know it's all about collaboration to make that happen. And there's no ego disputes, and there's no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we communicate. Yeah.
Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, you guys are collaborating amongst yourselves, but you're also putting it out there for the entire Amiga community too, like with your YouTube channel. You're trying to empower as many people as possible. You're not trying to do this all on your own, and that's key. Let's a couple quick questions. Do you know?
One second. I just realized we didn't completely answer one of the other important questions.
Go for
Will
it.
we be releasing this engine for other people to use? We definitely want to do something very much like that, and it depends on time and a lot of unforeseen things, exactly what shape this will take form in. No matter what, at the very least, we will be using this to make other games once this game is done. Like I said, a Golden Axe meets Altered Beast, but we really also want to explore the idea of working with and attracting other AAA tier developers, artists, game designers. And one of the best ways you can do that, one of the biggest risks for a really top quality designer that wants to make their own product and have creative control, is the risk of the project falling apart, of flaking.
Right.
And if I can go, I have Corey and I, we have so many friends from the industry, like us, that have been in the industry for over a decade, that have a lot of AAA qualities under our belts, that are itching for the chance to really creatively express themselves and make their own game. But there's that huge risk. A lot of them are artists and they need a programmer, and there's this massive risk that there's going to be personality disputes or different vision of the game. We're just going to argue with the artist over the direction the gameplay should go in, or how the art should be done, and then the project just falls apart. Now, on the other hand, if I could go to friends of mine that are among the best pixel artists literally alive today, there's no point in name dropping right now, but just like really amazing artists, better than myself. If I can go to them and say, hey, I know you've pixel art.
Oh, Mike, you have dropped out a little bit there.
Okay, testing. How's
You're
it
good.
going?
You're totally good. It just drops out for like a split second, and then.
Okay,
Yeah.
So if I can say to those friends and to other, like, just when I see excellent pixel artists out there, if I can say, hey, look, we have a 100% finished, ready to go, debugged, like really optimized engine, and we'll work with you. You design a game, we'll help you make your game come true on this engine. Suddenly the Amiga, even to people that never cared about the Amiga before, suddenly they'd be really interested in making a game for the Amiga. Especially because, like I said, now there is no reason at all, if you make a high quality retro game, there is no reason at all you can't be selling your game to a near infinitely bigger overall audience than just the Amiga community.
Awesome.
Don't get me wrong, me personally, I love the Amiga community. I am among you all. I've been an Amigan since I was about 14. But there's a lot of talent out there that may have never even heard of the Amiga. But the chance, if they get to use this Metro Siege engine, or I was planning on mentioning this eventually too, there are other very high quality game source codes out there that the Amiga community has done nothing with. If we can found, I think someone mentioned the Mr. Nuts source code is out there. I think it's the same thing with Turrican. I think it's Turrican 3. extremely high quality game engines. The full source code is out there. If we double check the legal status of that, like, can someone make a whole new game and sell it built on that code? Question mark. And if we dust off that code and figure out, okay, what workflow, what tools do people need to use to replace the level designs, to replace the art, to replace the sounds, that has huge potential. If we just start developing and sort of dusting off already existing high quality retro game engines, there's huge opportunity not only to empower people that are already in the community that could be making much higher quality games if they didn't have to worry about reprogramming it from scratch. And a lot of us are artists that are not real programmers, so we are forced to rely on things like Amos, which Amos is fantastic in that it does allow people like that. But if a really good artist has the option to use a AAA game engine that'll run it a really smooth high frame rate with lots of moving things on screen, or wasting a massive amount of time programming it themselves in Amos and then being able to have far less things on screen and less colors on screen, if they have the option to use a AAA quality engine, that will be extremely attractive to them, and they'll be able to make maybe twice as many or 4 times as many, and they'll be inspired to make way more games.
Because they don't have to get bogged down with the technical stuff.
Right. Yeah, you don't want great pixel artists spending most of their time learning and then programming in a language.
And going outside their area of expertise.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what's up, Hitch? And some folks are asking, yes, there will be bosses in the game, and yes, each character has got special moves as well. There's a whole list of special moves here.
Right.
They each have their own characteristics and special moves. I think I'm so far behind. Is the game OS friendly? It is. I'm playing it on OS 3.1 right now.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to catch up on the. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. Oh, Marky, thank you for the kind words, Marky.
Sorry about the water pouring sound.
No worries, no worries.
Okay.
Camille's asking if you're going to include the game within an emulator to sell it to other platforms. I think you're going to actually code it for other platforms. Is that correct?
Right, not this game. This game doesn't even. That is.
Oh, sorry, Mike. You said not this game, and then it dropped out.
Okay. So not Metro Siege. Alex worked out a fantastic, completely unmodern platform development system, where it is relatively easy for him to export the game, pixel perfect, frame perfect, onto modern platforms. So it is not, Metro Siege will not be wrapped in an. However, my point is, not only is that viable, and people should talk to Alex and get his feedback and suggestions on how to do this, because he already proved it. He's already tested. He was running a pixel frame perfect Metro Siege on an iPhone not too long ago. So that's exciting stuff.
That's awesome. I see, Mike, let me interrupt real quick. I see a lot of people asking about links to where they can support you. I have a command, which I should have mentioned earlier in the stream. If I didn't, it's !Mike. And that shows Mike's website, his Patreon, his YouTube channel. You can also do !Pixelglass. That'll take you to pixelglass.org. So !Mike. Lemon Amiga is asking, there's going to be lots of enemies and super bosses, right? How many different enemies?
Yeah, we're as many as we can fit, and as many as is on par with games like Streets of Rage 2. Gotcha. I would highly recommend treating Streets of Rage 2 as sort of the benchmark, but like I said, what we're really trying to do is exceed expectations, even our own, as much as and optimize, and to also, I'm really just grabbing from the best parts, the most viscerally fun, because that's what a brawler game is all about. It's that carnal, visceral fun, and so it's everything that really gave me that real fun factor that made me want to keep playing those games with my brother every day, all summer, year after year.
This is gonna be
those are the things.
This is gonna be a huge hit at our Westchester Amiga user group party. So I tell you, I can't wait. And then Rule of Thirds has got a great question, as well as a few other people. Yeah. Is there a demo of the game available for download?
Not yet. We definitely want the next thing that the whole team and Corey and I are really going to crunch on as soon as we get a chance, probably starting in a couple of weeks, is getting level 1 nice and tidy with the complete boss sequence for level 1, and then the actual sort of outro to level 1 that will transition into the next level. So in general, yeah, as far as number of levels and number of bosses, take a look at a long player play Streets of Rage 2. That's the sort of
That's
thing
what
we'll
you're
be shooting for.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and but like I said, there already are and will be more moves and more sophisticated gameplay than Streets of Rage 2, just because we're pulling from other games beyond Streets of Rage 2. Just everything that was really fun. And to me, it was about, I'm starting to get surrounded. I'm going to strategically move myself somewhere. I'm going to back attack the guy that just came behind me. I'm going to shoulder throw him into the guys that are in front of me. Then I'm going to jump up. So one thing I didn't mention, and I don't know if you're still playing the game and if people can see.
Oh, I'm playing like crazy, Mike.
Okay, so yeah, I turned off the stream so my bandwidth doesn't get.
You can, Mike.
bad.
You know what you can do as well. If you want to go to your browser, go to twitch.tv/AmigaBill/chat, and then you can see the chat, but it won't broadcast the video.
Okay. Well, in this case, the video is more relevant, but like I care so much about that concept in the gameplay. It's not just about pummeling someone one-on-one, like one at a time. It's all about constantly, frantically looking around and saying, where should I position myself? Especially if you're playing 2-player, how can I best help and back up the second player? How can we work well together? How can I make sure that I free up? And the wonderful, we intentionally kept this. This is that finding that balance of retro nostalgia and things like that, but what we lovingly call trash turkey. So it makes no sense that you can, one, jab a trash can and it'll just break open like an Easter or like some kind of like a Kinder chocolate, and then something, and then there's a nice fresh steaming turkey dinner, and of course if you eat that, it'll give you health back. So it makes no sense, but it's just
fun.
sort of, it's established universal video game language. And to remove it, like I literally was considering when we just started making this game into a reality beyond just the mock-up, a single image I made, I was really considering, do we want to be a little more serious and do like first aid kit type things, like advanced first aid kits? And I even started sketching one out in pixel art, and I just thought, it's so boring.
Right.
It doesn't feel right to the nostalgia, and visually, it's just a box with a cross on it or whatever.
The hamburger, I picked up a hamburger, I picked up a soda. It's
exactly.
way cooler. And
So,
I love what you were saying before about, instead of just like one-on-one combat, because at that point, like if I just walk up to an enemy and start beating on them, it's basically just a button smasher. But like when you try and incorporate these other strategies, then all of a sudden it gives the game it's a lot richer game, a much richer experience. It gives it a lot more depth.
And we've only just begun. Right now, it is very difficult. But if you initiate, it's the very same move, which I think is really cool. And I borrowed this a little bit from that game I mentioned before by, I think it's Capcom, Knights of the Round. But when you initiate the block, a cool thing about it is, if the enemy punches you within that like 1 second range of you having just initiated the block,
I'll try it right now. Whoops.
Your character automatically does a counterattack move. So they don't just block, they parry and counterattack automatically. So it rewards really good timing. But if you hold the block for a long time, it still functions as a block. But then you kind of get stuck for a second in the the sort of follow through of the block. When you get hit, you can't just immediately counterattack. So you protect yourself, but you don't get the cool counterattack. So it rewards really careful timing and really learning the tells, like the anticipation in an animation when an enemy or a boss is going to attack. We call that a tell, just like in poker, like someone has a tell. So
and the really good players can identify that. The chumps like me, sometimes we have a hard time, especially when it all happens
but
fast.
the thing is, right now we made sure that the works, but we haven't tweaked the timing and the animations yet. So right now, even on level 1, it's really hard and frustrating to pull off a counterattack. But it'll be the opposite in the final game. The first level, see, I also in general hate games that force you to play through tutorial levels that aren't part of the real story. In my opinion, especially in an action game, it should have a very natural grade curve and the first level should function as a really fun level, but also it gives you that safety and freedom to learn what you're doing, right? So the enemies they're not that fast, they're not that smart, they don't have a giant range of moves to do, but it's still fun and it gives you that chance to figure out what you're doing.
It's a much better design that way. Lots of folks are so I don't. It's hard. I try and ask the questions and keep it coherent. A lot of folks are saying, like, is there gonna be a CD32 version? A lot of CD32 fans in the chat. I mean, I love the CD32 as well.
I'm a big fan of the CD32 pixel art and original game projects going back like 20. It's got to be close to something like 20 years. We're developed on a CD32 with the SX1 unit, I think it was called, plugged in to make it into like an A1200.
Oh, right, yep.
And so that's definitely a goal of mine. I really want there to be. And as you saw and mentioned, Alex did make this game OS friendly. So a CD32 or just in general CD version of the game should be very doable. And it sure as heck is going to support the CD32 controller at the very least.
Especially with the 4 buttons like you were talking about before.
At the very least 4 buttons, which is more than what most actual arcade fighting games use.
Is there
or exactly the same?
Yeah. I mean, the
Usually
CD32 is the perfect. I mean, that's the perfect platform for your 4-button idea. Like I said, maybe putting the joystick next to the keyboard is a little tricky for folks like me. But it's a great idea though.
Don't get me wrong. I did not for 2-button arcade sticks or 3-button. I meant that for, like, if you have the old clunky granddad Atari 2600 style 1-button controller, an option is to stick that thing down on your desk near your keyboard, and then you're playing just like if you're standing at an arcade console. But the really important thing is, don't get me wrong, is the other thing is, it depends very much on the genre of game. We refuse to compromise the gameplay, the quality of actual gameplay, and we weren't going to make the gameplay suffer compared to Streets of Rage or the actual arcade games, just to suit the amount of people that might say, hey, I only have a 1-button joystick, and I demand the game have support for 1-button joysticks. You know what I mean? If that's the case, then you're not willing to do the keyboard thing for the buttons, then unfortunately, you don't find this game as important in the ways that we do. That we would really be bothered if you didn't buy the game because of that.
Right.
But it's more important that the game be absolutely AAA quality in the most important way, which is just fun factor and just having that AAA gameplay quality. And for a brawler, supporting a 1-button joystick is not the way to do. And like I said, that does not mean if we have time once we're done designing the game and all the moves, if we can figure out a really clever way to add 1-button joystick support, we very well might do that. But the important thing was, in the first place, we were not going to design the game with that in mind, because that would limit our creativity and limit our standards. Because we'd be sort of holding ourselves down to wait, there's no good way to do that with 1 button, so we won't add that move or that feature or the counter attack.
It'll tie you way down, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But it depends on the game. So that other game you'll see soon, a Demon Claw that I'm working on.
We need to start get some other stuff too. There's so much to do.
That was right, but that game was designed intentionally to work really well with 1-button controllers because that specific gameplay design just happens to work well with 1 button.
I love it. I love it because, like you're saying, is like not like if you try and have like one game that does it all, then it's gonna suffer, right? But if you're like this game works as a 2-button game, and we're gonna focus on that, then you're just gonna a nice counter move. Then you're just gonna we're gonna focus on that and not like spend our time compromising essentially.
Right, exactly right. Like the goal is the highest possible quality brawler game for the Amiga. And to go, oh well, since it's for the Amiga, most people just have a 1-button joystick. Immediately, we've destroyed our whole premise, and we've greatly diminished the whole reason we're making the game, which is to prove the point that a true AAA brawler game could have existed 20 years ago for the Amiga. And
Mike, do you have a quality team of beta testers testing it yet?
Not yet, but that will definitely happen. Extend invitations at least to at first a select group of people, and then we'll open it up bigger as it becomes appropriate. We're not quite there yet, though. Probably sometime, maybe shortly after we get level 1 fully functional, it'll make a lot more sense. But definitely everyone, the more people show their enthusiasm and this and their ability to really put in the required dedication to do true quality control testing. Like a lot of people, they'll get really excited about a game and they'll say, heck yes, I'll test the game. But then they really just want the game to play the game.
Right. Without giving you the
And
proper feedback.
which is fine.
Right.
Which is fine. But it really, like, if we want to limit the amount of people that have access to the early versions of the game to make sure they don't get leaked to the broader public ahead of time and kind of spoil the thunder of surprises and things like that, that can be an issue where we want at least the initial set of testers out there in the Amiga community. There won't be a lot of you, and we need to make sure that you're really dedicated to spending the time to put in really thorough testing and actual reports that are thorough with like screen recordings and game. There's a Alex built
Bug
in this
reports
awesome. Yeah, exactly. Alex built in a really cool save feature where you can literally save if you see a bug, you just press a key, and it saved the full gameplay on disk, so then you could send that file to Alex and he can see the exact bug and what was happening under the hood in the code when that bug happened, which obviously makes debugging drastically easier and faster. So like you'll need that level of dedication, but the more you prove that with your enthusiasm and you promise us that you have the time and the dedication to it, those will be the people that will be the first group of testers, of sort of private testers.
Mike, how far? I know you kind of answered this before. You're looking for like a Streets of Rage type of length, but about how far along in the process of creating this game are you right now? Just like a percent wise. Like, are you like a quarter of the way there, or about? Or?
Yeah. Percentiles is a really tricky because getting the core engine done and proving it could be done is a giant chunk of the work.
Right.
But at the same time, it is very true in production. There's an expression that we all know in the industry, which is the last 20% of a product is 80% of the work.
Sure.
So there's that giant crunch time. There's suddenly, you've got finding bugs you've never seen before, and just that last level of spit and polish that's so critical. So it's really tricky. And then you get into, well, does finishing all the stuff for the boxed edition and the swag, does that count? Does the marketing, preparing for the marketing, does that count as finishing the game, because it's part of releasing the game?
Awesome.
So it's really tricky stuff, but
it makes
I would say, I would safely say, in a sense, we're like 50% done, but that doesn't mean much.
Right.
Because it's the most important thing to me is we've completely proven the quality, and now really team and the programmer, we know exactly what constraints we can work within. So that is like the first absolutely massive hurdle, and then from there it's much more zen. It's much more coasting and momentum. You know what you need to do, constraints you're working under. There's no, oh no, I might have to shrink all the characters to get performance up there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we know the final resolution, we know the number of colors, we know exactly what color indices we can use, we know the overall gameplay, we have it all working. It's just getting in the extra material. It's designing the other enemies, getting all the animations done.
Mike,
all
one
that
second.
stuff.
Sorry to interrupt. I gotta pee really bad.
Yeah, go for it.
Damien D, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream. Roar, I'm gonna show the next project as soon as I come back from my bathroom break. And I got a question here for you, Mike. Any chance of a Street Fighter clone? Go.
Funny you should mention that. Absolutely a chance. I was already speaking with another very capable programmer about that very thing, and in fact, I'm obsessive about getting the most return for your investment of work and time and creativity. And that's a critical thing that's already covered to some degree in all of the videos you could find on Bitbeam Canon. Just, I think, really helpful advice and sort of systems of creating a large project that help you stay on point and sort of reality check. But so I was already talking to a programmer who had interest, and then I think I'm guessing, but I think they got into a real heavy maybe romantic relationship, or maybe about to be marriage or something. So that kind of the communication kind of stopped for a while. But the point is, what I want to do and what Bitbeam Canon is doing as much as possible, it's not just about single games. Not only are we going to reuse the engines as much as we can to make drastically different games like the Golden Axe style game that'll be on the Metroid Siege engine, but as much as possible, we're trying to build entire franchise. So, Metro Siege, the fighting game that I do want to make, will have the exact same world and characters as Metro Siege. The characters will just be bigger, and they'll have even more moves. But the core of the plot and the design, character design, and even the core move set of the characters will be based on these Metro Siege characters, of which there are many more characters. One, the unlockable other player, who's another main character of the franchise, or what will be a franchise. So, like I said, it's all making sure you get the most return for your work, not just in the long run, but every project that I have and that Bitbeam Canon has, we figure out how to make the work. It's all about breaking everything up into very realistic, manageable, smaller milestones that each have their own value and each have their own payoff, but all of them connected one by one. It builds you that momentum, and it leads you towards that big, epic goal of a big finished project. So, like for example, in Bitbeam Canon, Corey and I are working on several game projects. One of the ones that we're working on that Bill will show relatively soon is called Damon Claw, which is the one that will support a one-button controller. Originally, I proved the concept in Amos. That itself was a goal of mine. It already paid off because I wanted to prove that even if a creative person, even if a pixel artist was forced to use Amos instead of having like a top tier assembly or C programmer team up with them, that you could do a very high quality, legit looking 16-bit game with parallax scrolling and all those other things. And Bill does have, I sent him maybe the actual demo. I don't remember for
Mike,
sure.
I've got Shadow. I guess I've got Shadow of the Gods queued up next. I got it here on my hard drive.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, that's not the particular game, but if you have it queued up, this is another demo with an absolute other treasure of the Amiga community. Code Tapper is the alias he goes by, and he's just an absolutely incredible programmer that has spent so many years reverse engineering some of the most impressive Amiga games. And I got a chance to work with him, I think a couple years back now, and specifically to prove the point of just how much could be done with the on paper. Remember how I mentioned Mr. Nut?
Yes.
Was so close to AAA quality, but because they used standard Amiga dual playfield, they were programming an Amiga game like it was the Mega Drive. On the Mega Drive, you could do real dual playfield mode and still have plenty of 16 color sprites, so you didn't have to worry about it. But they used dual playfield mode like they were programming for the Mega Drive, and suddenly they had no colors for the enemies and just the same 7 colors as the foreground. So I wanted to prove just how many layers of parallax and how beautiful a game could look using nothing but the Amiga sprite power for all of the parallax, using that hardware banging trick that I just keep referring to as repeating sprites. So Code Tapper can explain this in much better detail than I can. He's way more technically knowledgeable than I am. But I already knew the concept, which is what was important for an artist to be able to make something with a really capable programmer. So if you look at that background and look at how many layers of parallax scrolling
It's incredible.
are going on.
Because you know what? It's the water has also got it as well. I'm seeing like the darker
Right.
grass in the foreground. I'm seeing like the main play
Right.
field. I think I
Yep.
see 3 in the water, plus maybe some like color shifting to make the water look ripply. And then I'm
Yep.
seeing 2 more layers of trees in the background. And then we have
Correct.
and then we have clouds that are also moving.
Yep.
They're not as parallaxy. They're more of like a scroll,
Exactly.
which is a really nice like combination. And then
Yeah.
this is amazing. And then the background itself. This
And
looks
there's a
gorgeous.
mid-layer tree. That mid-layer tree, go ahead and
Oh yeah, I see it. I see it. Yep.
back to the left. That tree is also made out of nothing but Amiga sprites.
Wow.
So you have the clouds, the moon, that entire mountain range back there, the back layer of trees, the mid layer of trees, the animated lake, which is more than just palette shifting. That's actually animated. So
Wow.
for any other game engine, you could have an animated background, the mid layer tree, and then the extreme foreground grass. That's all Amiga sprites, and this runs on an Amiga 500.
Amazing. I mean, that was another question. I think someone maybe was joining in a little bit late in the game, but the game we were just playing, Metro Siege, it runs on an Amiga 500 with 1 MB of RAM. Someone actually, just going back real quick to that, someone had a great question. Would it run on a 600 with 1 meg chip and no fast?
I am pretty sure, but definitely the person to answer that with absolute certainty is Alex.
Yeah, Alex is in chat.
Yeah,
he's Alpine 9000. So
right,
you can ask
exactly.
him.
So hopefully he'll answer that in the chat soon. But I think so. But anyway, so yeah, going back to the Shadow of the Gods, this is another thing. Remember, I mentioned a Metroidvania game. If we do well with Damon Claw, which you'll see soon, with Metro Siege for sure, this is another one next in the queue
Wow.
that I really, really want to make. And I have Corey and other top tier AAA, like literal, they are among the most revered in the pixel artist community of professional and aspiring pixel artists. Some of the most revered names in pixel art would love to collaborate with games like this or make their own games using the same engines once we make them and make them available. So, like I said, we have the opportunity to create just something beyond a renaissance, which is rebirth, literally, of AAA Amiga game development. Better games could be made for the Amiga now, which is just seems mind blowing because it would be considered by the majority of the world to be a completely obscure and obsolete platform. But that has changed now because retro is big,
It is
and because you can make an Amiga game on modern platforms.
incredible.
So there is no longer any limitation other than the community and drawing people from outside the community and the people in the community. A lot of us have become very jaded over the years, and we've suffered a lot of flaking, a lot of vaporware, stuff like that. We have a real good chance to completely. It's already happening. Amazing projects, even completely non-commercial ones, like that Rygar port that is just so high quality, and the shmup that is so high. Sorry, I don't remember all the names right now. But you know what? Like a lot
Yeah,
of really high.
the Rygar game is McGeezer.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. Right.
and the Shump, I think you're talking about the reshooter guys. Yeah, Richard
Yes.
Lowenstein. Yeah, what a team they have.
Right.
Wow.
And there are other extremely high quality projects that I know of that some of them I intentionally won't mention on this because they didn't want to reveal yet just how far along in their project, in that I have been helping them or will be helping them to make their game even better. I'm obsessive. I don't just want to make my own things. Corey and I, like I said, 10-year plus professional pixel artists, we love being able and that's another thing that will attract people from outside the top tier pixel artists from outside the community. Pixel artists are kind of sickos. We love the challenge of working within massive technical constraints. Like that gets us excited. That floats our boat, so to speak. That's just our fetish. And so like I said, Corey had very little knowledge of the Amiga. And when I pulled him onto Metro Siege and showed him what we were working, he wanted in. And when I started telling him about some of the extreme technical constraints that he would have to be working under, that made him more
Yeah.
excited, not less excited.
Sometimes working with those limitations can really like unleash your creativity. You know, like when you just have a completely blank canvas, sometimes it's a hard place to start. But when you have to like work within a set of rules and you can't just do anything you imagine, it forces you to get creative.
Exactly.
Yeah, Brother Bill.
The example I like to use for non-artists is poetry. Classical rhyming poetry. Those very strict rules of rhyme and meter. You have a small amount of artistic license. You go a little too far with that, and suddenly your poem is just crap because it's held up to high classical standards of actual rhyme and actual meter. But the most brilliant and beautiful poetry, it's all classical poetry. Once you have no limits and you still call it poetry, once you're not working with any constraints, you are not. And that's like gameplay itself took a giant hit during the even the first generation of Super Nintendo games, which I love. Even very high quality games like the first Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, like one of the first games released for it, in a lot of ways, creatively and gameplay wise, it was a step back from Super Mario 3, that is one of the all-time most brilliant games ever made. And one of the big differences in Super Mario 3, the creative director, the visionary force behind the Mario franchise, was at the peak of his creative potential, and they were forced to give 100% focus on gameplay because they had a tiny bit of memory to work with and all of those sort of technical constraints. They could only have so many sprites on screen and all that. So the designer had to give extreme care. What can I do that's the most fun within these constraints? The focus was on making sure it's fun. And then there was, when the Super Nintendo first came out, there was a huge incentive, a huge push from above, from management and marketing. We have to show off these cool new abilities
Right.
of the hardware. The hardware war had begun.
And it
And
took
it got
precedence over good gameplay and good games.
right. It was all about showing off
Yeah.
Mode 7 and showing that leg up on the Mega Drive. And so even the top tier games by brilliant game designers, it took a step back in actual gameplay quality and overall creativity. And it happened, I would say, even worse in the very first generation of 3D games. There are absolutely incredible 3D games, and there have been for many years. But at first, there was that everything has to be 3D, banned in 2D because it's all about the marketing war and the hardware war. And everything's about, like I said, we don't care about the numbers. Like, we care about how amazing we can make the game look and play and how good we the frame rate and everything. So internally we care about the numbers, but we are never going to brag on the box based on numbers. We're going to make the game speak for itself. You know what I mean? Like, you look at the game, you think it's beautiful, you think it's fun. That's what we care about. That's real bragging. If you're just bragging about number of colors, or in the case of 3D, number of polygons and stuff like that, then you're missing. These are video games. They're not tech demos.
Right.
Right.
They're supposed to be fun to play. Mike, I just want to catch up on
Exactly.
my
Yep.
on all this activity. And I also want to load up like the next demo.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brother Bill. Yes, we would love an Amiga Mini. Maybe one day we'll get our dream.
Yeah.
I just want to catch up on some of the business. Yo, Dad Bra, it's awesome to see you. I haven't seen you in years. He's an old friend of mine. Dad Bra, great.
Yeah.
Hello, Australia. That's amazing. Great
Yeah.
to see you, my man. Thank you, Stupid Negro, for the follow. Wait a minute. I don't know if that's real. Thank you, Pop Monkeys, for the resub. Thank you, 3D Code Warrior, for the gifted sub. Wow, thank you everyone for all the support. I'm sorry if anyone followed or subscribed and I missed. Thank you for the cheer, Anonymous. I appreciate all the support, everyone. This is awesome. I want to move on. I've got here on the floppy disk, I've got the barbarian game. Is that can we do that one next, Mike?
Yeah. That's Damon Claw. I think it's just called Bar.
Oh, that's
This
the Damon
is-
Claw. Got you. Okay.
Yes, that's Damon Claw, and this is the actual Amos made proof of concept.
Oh, so this is made in Amos.
This is 100% Amos, and actually, I got huge help after the fact. Once I got it working in general, Mike Ness, another treasure of the Amiga community, who's been upkeeping Amos and just really been a treasure trove of helpful information for all Amiga programmers, or many of them, for years and years, as long as I've been in the Amiga community. He helped me optimize the Amiga version after I had kind of sloppily artist programmed it. He helped optimize it and get it running smoothly on an Amiga 500. Which is a very big deal. So I think the demo you're looking at will run fine on an Amiga 500, and that's exactly what I wanted to do with this proof of concept in Amos.
Mike, while I'm doing this, sorry to interrupt. I just want to get back to that real quick. A lot of people are asking about the music. Like, who is the composer going to be for Metro Siege, and are you going to be using multi-channel sound engines like TFMX?
Right. So from a technical standpoint, what I can say, shown.
Mike,
Played it.
Mike,
I
sorry,
don't.
you're dropping out there.
Okay.
You can just start
So
the
am
answer
I
again.
good now?
You're totally good.
Okay. Okay, so to answer the technical side of things, Alex already made the sound engine work great, where you can have music and sound effects at the same time, which was also very important for us to be on par with console and arcade games, not forcing you to pick one or the other. So it does do smart. Uh, I think what it's doing is it's prioritizing values of sound effects, and so it will drop a quieter, less important sound effect for another one, which you don't even notice while you're playing. So you have the music going on a certain amount of channels, and then you have sound effects going on a certain amount of channels, and it'll very cleverly and carefully decide which sound effects to play at any given moment based on their priority level, which is usually going to be based on their volume, but not necessarily always the case.
Sweet. It's thank
So
you, Ash.
and
Thank
then
you.
who's going to be doing the music?
Yes.
Because this is our literal like sort of public release or reveal of Metro Siege, we've not gotten offers from nor reached out to make any deals with other creative people, including musicians. I am certainly perfectly happy. I think John is doing a fantastic job already with the limited time he's had. So I'm confident he could do a very high quality job with the music. But there's definitely the possibility, especially when we get into potential CD versions of the game, like for the CD32
Yeah,
or just
music,
Amiga
an
CD
audio
in
track.
general. Yeah, we
Yeah.
could have an alternate soundtrack. I would love if you're out there, not just for potentially Metro Siege, but famous or really skilled Amiga musicians out there. If you like what you're seeing with this game, Damon Claw, and the other projects you're going to see, and you're potentially interested in making an original soundtrack for it, that would also be a dream come true to collaborate with. You guys know who you are. The Amiga community knows who you are. Those really beloved and famous Amiga musicians. I'm actually plan when the demos of these games are a little further along, actually putting, making attempts to make contact with these very people and see if any of them are interested. But since I'm on a live stream here right now, I might as well
You might as
put the
well.
word out there ahead of time that if this interests you at all, um, uh, we and I, Bitbeam Canon, are very interested in working with you. But like I said, I definitely don't want to understate what a great job John is already doing. Extreme confidence
Mike,
that
this is
he will be able to deliver a AAA quality soundtrack on his own.
right.
But the idea of having like one or more of the really famous Amiga musicians do like the alternate or CD soundtrack
Oh,
of the
wow.
game for like the CD release, and then you could pick which soundtrack would be absolutely fantastic.
You gotta get in touch with like Chris
Um,
Hulsbeck or Alistair Brimble.
exactly.
That would be amazing. I'm sure they would be psyched to do it. They're still very active in the
Yeah.
community. Yeah. This game is
Yeah.
amazing, Mike. And thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks.
Thank you for the
Yeah.
kind words, Ash. I'm glad you're having a good time. I'm glad everyone's having a good
Right.
time. I've having a great time. Roar says it's Christmas in August. He's like, I can't believe it. So many new AAA games now. So this game is done in Amos. It's really amazing because when I think I'm untrained. I am not a game designer by any stretch of the developer by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know all the technical side of it. But the cool thing about these streams, is I'm learning a lot. So I'm super excited. But for the untrained person like myself, when we hear that it was made, with like a game creation device like like a red pill or something like that, it's like, okay, that's cool, but I really want the game to be done in like assembly or C and assembly, like you were mentioning before. And so but the fact that this is Amos is blowing my mind right now. It's really it's really incredible.
Not just Amos.
Oh, and then
no, remember,
actually let's explain
not just Amos.
what Amos is to the folks who are watching that aren't familiar.
Amos is just a fantastic basic programming language made specifically for the Amiga. It was based on DOS, which was made first for the Atari ST. Same idea. I know it's kind of sacrilege, perhaps, to mention the Atari ST. I'm kidding, but
it's all good.
But yeah. But his first name is Francois. It's something like Nicolet or something like that. I'm so sorry, Francois. We've spoken so many times privately and in chats, but he was the creator of STOS, which was the Atari ST version of Amos, and then Amos. And the whole idea of both of them was it was a basic programming language geared directly toward empowering people to make video games who weren't hardcore programmers with the time and aptitude and attention span to learn the hardcore languages like assembly or C. And Amos did an amazing job in that regard. It was the first programming language that I really learned quite in depth, and it helped empower me to prove a lot of concepts even 20 years ago, which I'll mention. Remind me a little while about the thing I want to talk about. One of the things I want to talk about, the ability to get a transparency, or more technically correct, translucency effect, even on an Amiga 500, which is, if everyone remembers, in the Super Nintendo, one of the aspects of mode, what they called mode 7, was this fancy translucent color overlay that the Super Nintendo could do. That mostly, this isn't completely true. The Mega Drive could do some variants of it. They had a brightening and a darkening mode. But the Super Nintendo, it could do any color, entire layers of color. It could make semi-transparent in a few different ways, which was a very big deal visually then, and very, very few Amiga games displayed anything like this, because technically, according to the hardware manual, there's no such feature. The closest thing is 64 color half bright mode, which a few clever developers did use in that way to get that translucent, almost always for either shadows or smoke
I
in
used
a
to use
game.
it in D-Paint a lot. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So, but the cool thing is, if you very carefully arrange your and on the Amiga, you can tell the blitter when you're about to draw Bob to the screen. You could very carefully tell it which bit planes of that Bob should actually be drawn to the screen. And what happens when you do that, and it was my brother that theorized this and explained the concept to me all those, like, more than 2 decades ago. And after I discovered and learned Amos, one day I'm flipping through the more obscure back part of the manual, and I discovered that there was this thing called set bob in Amos. That, I mean, imagine a basic programming language that lets you do hardware banging.
It's
So,
incredible.
like,
I
it
got
actually, yeah. Go
Mike,
ahead.
it's all like, it's very inspiring to me.
Yeah.
One of my buddies, Mandy, he's from the Polish Amiga users. I met him at Ami Party, and he started learning Amos. I don't know, like 5 years ago. And his dream was
Yeah.
always to program a demo, right? To be like a demo
Yes.
scener. And his first one he programmed was like really cool. And then, but it was just so nice to see him enter in these competitions like every year and see like the level
Yeah.
of progression is just mind-boggling. Like
Right.
something like Amos is
Right.
something that like even inspires me, because I'm a creative person. I'd love to make a
Right.
game one day. I don't even know,
Right.
like where to start. But I think, Mike,
Right.
let's fire up some of the other
Yeah.
the bonus videos that you sent
Okay.
me.
Yeah. Let's keep moving.
Th-
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
'cause
Yeah.
that this game looks incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yep.
Your artwork is so good, by
long
the way.
story short, that's the proof of concept. We're using a modern development platforms to speed ahead, and Corey and I are making the entire full game, but we're making all the graphics completely Amiga compliant that would even work in this Amos engine if we just replace the graphics. So we're ahead of time making the whole game that we can release and start to build support, and potentially even start making some revenue on the modern version of the game. But at the same time, we're designing the complete and making all the necessary art for the Amiga version of the game. Then once that's done, we're going to backtrack and work with a very good programmer. I'll leave it to that programmer if he wants to announce. He's in the stream now. I'll leave it to that programmer to announce if he wants to or not yet that he's going to be the programmer for this game. But the point is, so we'll backtrack. We'll have a completely designed game with all ready, and he can just race through, copy the exact game that he can play and see, and just have all the art. There will be no bottleneck, no waiting for art, and he'll be able to make the Amiga version. And we'll almost certainly, Corey and I will design a new Amiga only, like exclusive Amiga version only level, boss and stuff like that, to
Wow.
add even greater value to that sort of final legit retro version of the game.
Mike, I'm telling you, this is the most exciting thing that's happened that I've heard about in like Amiga in a long time. There's been a lot of exciting things happening, but like your
Yeah.
vision for the future excites me. Yeah, I see some really awesome people
Yeah.
in chat here. I'm so lucky to have them. Richard's here from Reshooter. I love Richard.
Yeah.
What's up, buddy?
Yeah.
So many great people. Amiga J is here. What's up, Amiga J? Oh, great to see you. He has a good point. The screen size. He's like, is it possible to do like an AGA version where the screen could be a little bit bigger?
That is certainly possible. I would leave to Alex to get into more detail. Our focus almost certainly is going to be all about getting an absolutely incredible version where really happy, and where the community and fans even far outside the Amiga community just say, wow, this is a great retro game. And I just really want to draw new people, exactly like you said.
Yep.
I want people who have never heard of the Amiga before, who just love 2D games and retro games, to just find this game on platforms like Steam and even Android and iPhone, and play this game and go, wow, this is a good game. Whoa, what's this? It made on the what? What's the Amiga? And I'll probably even build a link, push the button on their iPhone, learn more about the Amiga, and boom, we can draw in new people to have excitement over the Amiga as not just a retro game platform, but a platform for new retro games.
Mike, I gotta tell you, from
Yeah.
just from my experience of like I exhibit Amiga at vintage computer festivals every year. I'm actually even wearing the shirt right now.
Right.
And like there's two reactions happen. Like a lot of times, people like our age will see the Amiga and they're like, their faces just light up and they're like, oh my god, the Amiga!
Yeah.
I remember the Amiga. It brings back so many great memories. And then other people, like younger people, come over and they see it and they're just like, an Amiga, I've heard of this. I've never seen one before. Like I'm so excited to see it. Like there's just something about this machine that like gets people like super excited. So I really think that your vision of bringing in new people to the community is gonna work.
Yeah.
I've seen the interest. I also up on the screen right now just is all the amazing attack moves that you can do in Metro Siege. But I want to fire up some of the other things that you sent me. Brother Bill, yeah, dude, I would love an Amiga Mini. I would love it. It's not in my hands. If it was up to me, we'd have one. It's a lot to it though.
We'll save this for another stream, but I've got some really juicy ideas and info that I can't share yet that are somewhat related to the idea of an Amiga Mini. Even more exciting, probably, but I won't go into that yet.
Well, you're gonna have to come back on again, Mike, because we have so much to talk about. Like we're just scratching the surface today.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's should I start with the Amos intro video?
This is, we can just look at this. But Mike Ness, who I mentioned, was.
Oh, sorry, Mike, you're breaking up a little bit there.
Okay, I will turn off the stream again on my end, so I save bandwidth. So I'm good now.
You are great.
Okay, so I mentioned Mike Ness, and he's improving Amos so that people using Amos will have a better and better time making the highest quality games, and I'm working with him on that as well as much as I can. And he wanted to create a new installer for Amos, including new graphics. So I designed a totally new thing. So that's what Amos intro is. And I don't know if it's on the screen or not yet. Sorry,
I'm playing it right now. Yeah, I tried to. You're not on the screen just because I wanted it to go full screen.
So if you look really carefully, what I mentioned was you can do, even in really cool translucent color effects. And if you look carefully, I added that rotating kind of white
on the left side.
reticle, that crosshair thing. If you'll notice, that is perfectly translucent. You can see the background graphics through it as it moves. That's a real moving bob. There's no trick. It's just using that harder banging trick of picking the specific color index you're drawing and the specific bit planes. And that's a recent discovery. So not only can you have the tinting mode where you're tinting the whole background graphics as specific color schemes, like tint it red, tint it blue, you can also brighten. So that's the brightening mode that I recently discovered. So you could have, like, even in a 16 color game, you could potentially, you have your 16 color background graphics, but then you can move around these ghost cool effect, like magical effect bobs that are just, for all intents and purposes, normal bobs, but they do that cool semi-transparent tinting effect. And then on top of that, you could even do a brightening effect. So you could have like a crazy level of translucent effects, even on an Amos made Amiga game. And to clarify, that demo of Damon Claw, that Barbarian game, that wasn't just made in Amos and works on Amos on classic Amigas. It runs on an Amiga 500.
Wow.
A lot of decent quality Amos made games require AGA or better, because the performance of a basic language, even after you compile it, isn't that great compared to C or assembly. But so the whole point of that initial, but anyway, so that's it for the Amos 2 thing.
Sweet.
If you want to move on to there's something called shmup, mech shmup,
Mech Jump.
mech,
Yep. Mech
yeah.
Jump.
So you might as well show that one next. That's the same idea. It's a proof of concept. Mike Ness helped me make that run smoothly on an Amiga 500. I messed up after adding cool. If you look, that actually works with a controller, and you can shoot and blow up enemies. And
I
if
just
that's
picked
the
up my
latest,
controller, but I'm playing a video.
okay. So unfortunately, I don't think I sent you the latest build because it has some glitches. Because like I said, I do art programming, and I just added the new features on. And usually, I would get help to optimize it and perfect the code. But Mike Ness and I haven't had time yet to sit back down and update the new features. But the cool thing is, with any old console or the Amiga, because it worked in index color mode, one effect that almost no one uses well, that is a shame, that should be part of the renaissance of making better than ever Amiga games, is the concept of just you can update the palette so easily. There's almost no overhead in memory or performance. And it's a full screen wide effect. So everyone in the Amiga community knows about color cycling.
Sure.
You can color cycle during the gameplay, or better, you could do so in the latest version of this game, the shmup one you're looking at now, the mech shmup. Every time you blow up the enemy, the screen tints more and more red, like it brightens from the
Wow.
brightness of the explosion. And I created this cool formula where I have like 8 different palettes in memory, like pre-created palettes ranging from extremely bright and very red to back down to being almost exactly the original palette. And so if you just make one explosion happen on screen, maybe it'll go to the 4th palette, so it's quite red, but not completely red. But if you blow up 3 enemies on a time and there's 3 explosions on screen, then it's going to go all the way up to like the 10th palette where it's really red. And automatically it's just fading back down to the normal palette. So you can get these amazing full screen wide atmospheric effects that make the game look and feel so much more just like visually high quality and what's that word, immersive
Mhm.
and atmospheric. And like on modern systems, stuff like that is a bigger deal because you would have to do like hardware filtering or additive overlays or all this fancy stuff to be able to fade the colors. On an Amiga or a classic console, a 16-bit or 8-bit console, all you're doing is changing the RGB value color indices. It's amazing
Yeah.
how cheap it is for a full screen effect that can add amazing levels of polish to your game.
Mike is
And
incredible.
almost no one puts use to it. So that's another point I wanted to make in the latest version of that demo, which unfortunately you don't have yet, but hopefully I described it well enough.
You did, you
Um,
did. The everyone is
yeah.
super psyched. They Santi, amazing game developer himself and a great friend. He wants, and a lot of other people, they want you to do a Amos tutorial on your Patreon. That would be
There
yeah.
already are in our YouTube channel. There already are several making games with videos, and there will be more. And probably that proof of concept of Damon Claw, that is a mostly fully functional basic level.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Ness and I, we are going to finish that into a complete level. Right now, it's just using a big 2 screen wide bit plane for the background because we haven't had time to make an optimized, like a new optimized for Amos tile level loading and displaying system. But it will be part of that demo. And absolutely 100% when we get it to that point, and even beforehand, as it stands now, the actual Amos code to my Patreon backers, and it will eventually be a completely open Amos code for anyone to use to piggyback off of if they want to make a high quality side scrolling. And that engine itself, not only will it have everything you need in tutorial, also make tutorials for how to edit levels and all that stuff, and swap out the art and the sound effects. But also it will have the transparency effect, the translucency effect built into it, and also
Wow.
a tutorial. Just set up your palette like this and just do this and it'll work. And so that's what Bitbeam Canon is all about. It's not just about making our own games. It's about
Sharing.
encouraging, empowering, and just giving other creators with so much potential that's in the Amiga community and outside, shaking off that kind of oppressive cloud that we've had for so many years, of the flakeware, of the, oh, it's only for the Amiga, I can't spend too much time on a project, or all of those things. A lot of the Bitbeam Canon videos and the tools and code that we're going to release, I've already started. Like 10 years ago, I released that my first demo explaining exactly how to do that translucent effect in Amos. It's been floating in the Amiga community for over a decade, but just most people didn't know about it until now, or soon after this stream continues to spread. But that's just the beginning of it. There's a lot of tools. Actually, why don't we jump to the
Yep.
Spriter prototype?
Oh, I have
So
the Shump transparent or the translucent
okay,
pops. Do you want to do the Shump
all right,
transparent?
yeah. Let's show that one is just another. This one would not run well. Just
Oh, Mike,
showing
sorry, you
off
said this one would not run well, and then it dropped out, unfortunately.
on an Amiga 500. It
Okay.
needs AGA choppy, but that was because in this particular
Wow.
demo, I was showing off many things at once. You can get this nice translucency effect just fine on Amos, running well on an Amiga 500, but I created a crazy amount of parallax scrolling, just hardcore blitting everything, which is way
That's
too
amazing,
much.
dude.
Way too much for Amos to handle. But if I can't see the screen right now, but if you're showing it,
I am.
uh, you can use the mouse to control your character, and the left mouse button will shoot a giant beam across the screen.
Oh, I'm just showing the video, so I can't control the video.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay. Well, if
yeah.
you look at
I don't have the actual demo. I wish I
oh,
did.
okay,
Yeah,
okay, I
yeah.
forgot.
No,
Okay,
yeah, I'm just playing a
so
video.
if you look, I forgot I just recorded and sent a video. But if
But
you look
I
carefully,
love
the
the beam.
it's
The beam is translucent. It's beautiful.
exactly.
And
So are
the
the
fire
impact.
behind him as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The impact effects are translucent, and if you look when the entire player or enemies go up under that big thing that says that demonstration is switching between being translucent
Oh
grayscale
yes.
and translucent red, and it perfectly updates. And remember, everyone, any regular Amiga can do this, and there's very little overhead.
Wow.
Excuse me. So yeah, like everything, Bitbeam Canon, we just want to not just make great games, but really give people the information they need to get them pumped and to raise the caliber of what they thought they were capable of doing, and to just raise the bar every way possible, and just empower and encourage people to just keep making amazing retro games. For me, especially for and within the Amiga community, but I really want to expand it out. I want new blood in the Amiga community,
That's the key.
excited about the platform.
And that's the key. Yeah, Santi loves it. Santi says insane. Vincent GR, what's up, Vincent? He says Amos porn. Amiga DJ said this was he saw this on the EAB a while back.
Yeah,
And then Pixel's on. Who needs an SNES when you've got Amos? It's
right. But
incredible.
yeah, so that's the point. Like when you combine these techniques and an artist that understands them and a good programmer, you can go so much farther, as you can see by Metro Siege, which doesn't put use to the translucent effect yet, but it could. You know what I mean? And so anyway, there's, I mean, the sky's the limit to. I am very confident with the mock-ups I've made that are floating out there in the Amiga community if you hunt them down. But we can definitely make some games that make people wonder. So many people over the years have just assumed that the Mega Drive was just definitely way better than the Amiga for arcade style games and console quality games. Things can definitely be done, and hopefully Metro Siege will be one of them, one of the earliest ones. But games can be made that will make people very much second guess whether or not that's true.
That's
And
Mike,
that's my goal.
I love the
Yeah.
your the investment in the Amiga community, because that's really the future. Like bringing new people in and new fresh ideas and young blood. That people often
Right.
ask me like what the future of Amiga is, and I think that's the key to keeping it alive, is getting new people involved. So
Right.
many props to you guys for having this attitude. It's not, you guys aren't just
Right.
keeping it internally, man. You wanna share the
Right.
love. You wanna get new people in. Santi's
Right.
got a great question. He's asking, do you use AMAL or just Amos commands?
AML as much as possible for moving and animated, and then Amos, so I guess you would call it higher level, just Amos in general, for core logic where AML would either not be feasible or just is beyond my pay grade to as a non-real programmer. But like I said, Mike Ness, who is a very good actual professional programmer and one of the most knowledgeable people regarding Amos out there, I've been getting his help to retool, restructure, and optimize my code as much as possible to prove these concepts. But email is anyone interested in Amos. If you want to make a high quality game, you definitely need to figure out and learn how email works. And that's definitely something that Mike Ness and I would be interested in doing when time allows. And again, the more the Amiga community gets together and is excited and likes and shares and retweets and goes as far as Patreoning, that's going to make the big difference of just how fast and explosive this renaissance takes place. And
It's the
yeah,
time is
anyway,
right,
so
Mike. I mean, the Amiga community
it
is
really
super
is.
passionate.
Oh,
I mean, I've met so many. Like, I've met my best friends in the world through the Amiga community, and there's so
yeah,
many talented people in it, and so many like good-hearted people, and it's
right,
you're really tapping into that. Um,
yeah.
Seago's asking if you could. I want to play the next video, but he's asking if you could
Yeah, yeah,
elaborate a
yeah.
little bit on Blitz Basic versus Amos.
I personally cannot because I have very experience directly with Blitz Basic. I know in some ways it was superior to Amos, and I know in some ways there were some things you could do in Amos that you couldn't do with Blitz Basic, as far as I understand.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think, and I could be completely wrong, so someone in the chat, and I can't see the chat right now, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think especially when it comes to some of the more kind of hardware banging type trickery, like I don't know if you'd be able to do the translucent effect at all in Blitz Basic. That would be awesome if you could, and maybe it's possible if the source code for Blitz Basic exists and is out there. Maybe it's possible even to augment that more easily. Like it's pretty darn hard right now for any new person to come in and make a new plugin for Amos. You have to be a hardcore Amos dedicated nut to figure out how to make a new plugin for Amos. It's very convoluted. It's underdocumented. Really smart guys have put a lot of work into making it possible, and they've succeeded in making some plugins. But maybe, I don't know, but maybe it would be easier to augment on top of Blitz Basic. That's a big question mark. I'm putting that out there.
Fair enough.
That's not
Yeah.
information. That's a question.
Try to.
Yeah.
I know, guys. Now that I'm calming down a little bit, I can see the chat a little bit better
Mm.
without mentioning me. But still, if you have a question,
Yeah.
please mention me. But Trials makes just a really nice point. He's Trials
Yeah.
saying that it's so encouraging after all the doom and gloom in the Amiga community regarding arcade style
Yes.
games that he's seeing this and he's like super inspired by it. And me too, man. Me too. Like arcade
Yeah.
now, like at this point in my life, like arcade. A quick jump or
Right.
a quick game that's like a quick play is really suits my lifestyle well.
Exactly.
So
I
I'm
think
super.
it does for I think it does for all of us, people with families and day jobs that are very demanding of time. I just don't have the time anymore to play games that are giant time sinks, no matter how high quality. Like I have huge respect for games going back in the 16-bit day with like Final Fantasy, whichever was the first one on the Super Nintendo.
Hmm.
I loved being able to like look over my brother's shoulder while he played it and invested the time while I was busy like painting or whatever. But I don't have that benefit anymore. You know what I mean? There's no one whose shoulder I could look over. Now there's long plays on YouTube, which
Yeah.
is fantastic. But anyway, point is, oh, and speaking of my brother, he's in the chat now. And speaking of sort of unsung treasures to the Amiga community, if you're excited about what I'm doing, he's a giant part of why I know what I know about the Amiga's technical constraints and why I love it so much and why I've always been so passionate about making games. That transparency idea was his idea. I just proved it possible with Amos. So,
You guys
but
are an
anyway,
awesome
yeah,
team, man. That's great. Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
Chris in the chat. Chris, thanks you
yeah,
so much for being here, and thanks for
uh,
working with Mike. It's amazing.
yeah.
Try's asking, do you like the ports of Final Fight and Street Fighter 2?
I assume that means on the Amiga.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And
Yeah.
yes, and here's what I have to say, experience
Oh,
with
Mike,
Final
sorry,
Fight.
you dropped out there.
Yep. So I was saying, is it good now?
Yeah, you're totally good.
All right. I have much more experience directly with Final Fight on the Amiga, so I'm going to cover that one specifically. It's a really tricky thing to get into without unnecessarily insulting the one-man team that made that port.
Mm.
I really think, given the circumstances, that person, I can't remember his name right now, did an incredible job making the port with the budget, time, and team constraints that was forced upon them, or offered them as a paying job, which for all intents and purposes is forced upon someone if they need to support themselves. But anyway, point is, they hired a very capable programmer. They gave him something like 6 months to port the entire game himself. They gave him no artist to port the graphics from the very high color arcade games, even back then, could display a huge amount of colors on screen at a time, right? So not only was he forced to make the port in a short amount of time and not given an artist, but he literally had to come up with his own. He had to, before he could even program the game, he had to program this code that would rip the graphics out of the actual arcade board and just hardcore rip it down to this nasty 16 color palette that would just work good enough with everything. And that's why the game looks the way it does. And so he had an insane challenge. And to make matters worse, he admitted himself in an interview I saw later, but this is how I remember it. He had very little interest in the genre of beat 'em ups, and here he is, the sole guy responsible for making the port of a AAA Amiga beat 'em up game. And there was that pressure, oh, it's got to support one-button controllers, so the gameplay design suffered massively. On top of that, I'm sure there was pressure to make it work back then on a 512K Amiga, so I am almost certain he had to make the game actually support real-time flipping of images while blitting. Otherwise, there's no way he could have fit all those characters facing left and right at any time in a 512K Amiga. So I think the programmer did an incredible job giving those. Oh, the other really bad thing that just ruined so many ports, even of arcade games, they had to simultaneously make the Atari ST port and the Amiga port at the same time because they shared the same main. So many games were forced to use a 16 color palette only because it had to be the same code and same graphics at the same time for the Atari ST and the Amiga. And then often the games would not use the Amiga's custom chipset at all. So it wouldn't benefit from the extra blitting power and the sprites, and very often even the sound abilities of the Amiga. So that's my feeling of it. The particular person that did it did an amazing job, and they are clearly an extremely, and were back then, and I think they were extremely young at the time, and obviously really brilliant, like very, very capable programmer that with no team, no interest, not enough funding, and not enough time, did a remarkably capable port. But remarkably capable is not the same as high quality or anything near what the Amiga version should have been. And that's a big part of what Metro Siege is trying to prove. In fact, here's some really cool secret info. Or
I love the secret info.
Not secret anymore.
Okay.
The very mock-up of this game that started it all, long before it became a real game project, I started it by literally hand pixel art painting over a screen grab of Final Fight Amiga version. It drove me nuts, that thing I told you about, how everything was just ripped down by an algorithm to this really nasty 16-bit, 16 color palette for everything. And I was like, and I'm obsessed with just making low color things look really nice. So that's where it started, was me going, no, Final Fight could have looked way better than this. Even all of that programmer needed was an artist on the team that was really good with using 16 colors, who could hand remap the colors to a very carefully crafted 16 color palette. So that the original mock-up of Metro Siege was just a hand recolored, it doesn't exist anymore, sorry. But just a hand recolored Amiga Final Fight 16 color game. But when I was about 60% done doing that, my attitude is always, why redo someone else's person? I'll just totally redo the graphics now based on the premise of what could technically run on an Amiga 500. And so I reconceptualized how to get parallax in there with so I did so much talking with Code Tapper and studying his website and all those articles and all these different tricks to get, I think it's called Sprite Tricks, the Code Tapper website section that talks about all this. So I made sure I understood all that, most of which I already did thanks to my brother, Chris GP or something like that I'm not looking at the thread,
it's Christopher Apparent. I think that's his name on the.
Oh, okay.
He's in there, yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's him. So, but thanks to him, I knew So I just went in and said, okay, how can I make this game look as arcade quality as possible? And I just, by the time I was done, I had replaced every pixel from the original Final Fight mock-up, and it became its own original concept. And that is the screen that attracted John, who in turn said, hey, Alex, look at this. And that's what got it all rolling.
Incredible.
So, anyway.
Incredible. Everyone is super excited. They really appreciate all the information that you're sharing, Mike. As do I. Trito is saying that the guy who you were talking about, his name is Richard Alpin, and he
Yes.
did the interview with him. Trio did the interview that you're talking about.
Awesome. Great job. Thank you so much. Like
Uh,
that kind of information is so valuable to the Amiga community, and people like him and Code Tapper, I just really appreciate.
So Mike, I've got
Yeah.
a few of your videos I've been playing as
Yeah.
you were doing giving that awesome answer. Much respect to that
Yeah.
answer. I'm gonna go
Okay.
back. I had the working in the proto up, but I'm gonna go back to the translucent bobs right now because I had that one
Yep.
up. Maybe you want to talk about this one a little bit. I mean, everyone's super psyched when they, especially at the end of the video when you really see that translucent demo. It's
Right.
really awesome.
Yeah. Well, the demo is out there floating on the Amiga to the chat.
Mike, sorry,
but
you just dropped out there. When you drop out, you only drop
Okay.
out for a couple seconds, but I want to give you the chance.
Okay.
When I can
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
that it doesn't make a difference in
Yeah.
the flow, I don't even bother mentioning it.
Right.
But that time it dropped
Okay.
out for a bit.
Okay, so I don't know if Mike Ness is in the chat, but if he is, where, like somewhere in the Amos community forums, I think it's called Amos Factory, you can already get the example Amos code that shows and explains exactly how to do this transparent effect. So it's out there, and certainly I'll just continually update our YouTube channel and our Patreon page, and just start making these things readily available there. Even in the non-private part of the Patreon page, I'll do that as much as I can. But obviously, I also want to entice people. Like the really cool thing about our Patreon page at Bitbeam Canon, we have so many private videos already. You can, like in the case of Damon Claw, you can see Corey and I sit down and have what's called a scrum, which is a meeting for developers. That's the real world. It's a system called Agile at professional game
I did play
development
some rugby.
studios use.
I did play some rugby, so I know where the
Yeah. So that's where it comes from. It is, yes.
Yeah.
But the point is, we just have these really intensive creative meetings where we're just, we have this checklist of things we want to figure out, and you can actually watch us like a fly in the wall, like a member of the team sitting in the room with us. You can watch as it happens, us making the really concrete game design decisions, the actual plot to Damon Claw, what bosses there are going to be. And like I said, we really want to explain how the exact kind of workflow that professional game developers use to make sure the game gets done and doesn't fall apart. And that is incredibly useful info to indie developers that is largely unknown. So
Captain
we really
John,
do want...
Captain John's a
Yep.
Patreon backer, and he says your videos are really entertaining and interesting, just like the stream has been. I've learned so
Yep.
much on the stream so far today, Mike.
Awesome.
It's just awesome, and I
Yeah.
also realized how little I know.
Yeah.
But this has been awesome. So speaking of learning, I'm seeing your translucent bobs. First of all, you know what?
Yes.
Let's just take it back. If anyone's new to join the stream, I should have done this a long time ago, 3 hours ago. But we have Mike Parent on. He is Amiga game developer. He's got some really amazing projects. Like I want to talk about Metro Siege, but he's got a lot of stuff coming up. And Mike, why don't you explain what a bob? I mean, most people watching probably know what a bob is, but
Yes.
some people might not.
Right. Yeah. And those new people someday, that watch the archived version of this stream to see where it all started.
Nice.
I'll explain to them what bobs. But bobs are blitter objects. So BOB is the what is that called? Is that a
Acronym.
What is that called? Acronym.
Yeah, and the blitter is
Um,
is a custom chip
yes.
that's unique to the Commodore
Yes.
Amiga computer.
So the difference is most arcade systems and for moving objects back in the day, they used what are called sprites, which use separate graphic hardware to draw these objects on screen over the background graphics in a way where they're completely independent from the background. So they can be moved around independently, colors changed independently. You can do draw them and erase them from the screen without having to clean up and fix the background. So they're incredibly useful, and they were a very cost-effective way to add the power to display a lot of moving objects on the screen for consoles and arcade systems. The Amiga developers decided to go an extremely different way with the Amiga. They wanted arcade quality graphics, but they took a very different approach. And so I think the Amiga was among the first, if not the first, home computer to offer very powerful blitting abilities built into its hardware. And blitting is the very different approach of it's all just considered background graphics. It's all just pixels basically in the same layer. It gets a little more complicated when you talk about dual playfield mode, or like hardware based layered scrolling, or also known as parallax scrolling to some. But anyway, the point is bobs are pixels drawn directly into the background.
Mm-hmm.
And the plus side of that is if your background is 32 colors, you can have a moving object that is all 32 colors moving around on that background. The downside is it's the same 32 colors or colors from there. So if you change the colors in the background, your character that is a Bob is forced to change too along with it, because it's the colors are referencing the same color indexes or indices, however you want to pronounce it. And so the other plus side to Bob's is if you are double buffering, you can have as many as you want across the whole screen, and you will have no flickering, which plagued even 16-bit game consoles when you had too many things across the same scan line, which is a horizontal line on a TV screen. Then you would end up with sprites flickering off and on, which was a very unpleasant visual side effect of game designers designing a game that ended up putting too many sprites on screen to avoid this flickering effect. So with Bob's, that's not an issue. However, if you do not have a very powerful sort of subsystem or part of the hardware dedicated to blitting, which is drawing Bobs onto the screen, then you're still going to hit a bottleneck of frame rate, performance, memory usage, especially because when you draw a Bob onto the screen and you have background graphics, you have to come up with a system that says, okay, where's this Bob going to be drawn? And then you have to grab and protect and save in memory that piece of the background graphics, just store it in memory, draw your Bob, and then when you want to move or remove or change the animation frame of that Bob, you need to replace the background graphics back over that original frame of the Bob, and then get the new frame of the Bob or the new position for the Bob and stamp it back down over the graphics. And you have to do that for every screen update.
Wow. That's massive.
You need a powerful blitting system. And for the day, the Amiga introduced one of the, if not the first, really powerful blitting system, which was capable of moving, I don't know how many, I forget how many thousands or hundreds of thousands, or a lot of pixels per second it could blit.
Mike,
there were still limitations.
You have to check out one of my, not the self-promotion. I did an interview. Me and my buddy Anthony did an interview with Joe DeCure, and he talks a lot about this hardware blitting. He's one of the original Amiga engineers over on our YouTube channel. Yeah, he was really, really amazing. I think you would really like the interview. He doesn't get that deep into it, but he touches on some of this, exactly like what you're talking about. The force is strong on the Amiga.
But the really cool thing, because they were all about the blitter on the hardware development team for the Amiga, they're like, nah, sprite's mouse pointer. That's what the sprite is for.
Right.
The mouse pointer. Everything else is all blitter. Because they put all the eggs in one basket, so to speak, for a very long time, a lot of Amiga games suffered, like I said, because programmers were programming it like it was the Mega Drive, using real hardware dual playfield mode, which suddenly you only have 7 colors per layer and no sprites, or practically no sprites. At first, if people used it out of the box, you had less than 8 16-pixel wide, 3-color sprites. Compared to any other 16-bit console, that was embarrassingly weak. That was just terrible. That's weaker than the 8-bit Nintendo, to put it in perspective.
Wow.
In a sense, not 100%, but in a sense. But the amazing thing is, Once people started thinking outside the box and we got real hardware bangers like Psygnosis and stuff and amazing studios like that, eventually they came up with all these amazing tricks that used the copper or co-processor of the Amiga that could change. Like I'm an artist, so I'm doing as best I can, so I might get a few things wrong,
We're doing
but
well.
basically like memory registers and things like that, while the little laser, this is old technology, remember CRT TVs and stuff like that, while the laser is drawing the screen so fast that to the human eye the TV screen looks like one image, the coprocessor was so fast that it could change out memory and stuff like that while the pixel was drawing the screen, while the laser was drawing one horizontal row on the screen. The Amiga could do stuff. You know what I mean? And that's, they realized some of that stuff you could do could allow you to change many RGB values, many colors. So let's say you have, just like in Metro Siege, you have what it thinks is a 16 color game. By using the copper, the coprocessor, you wait until the beam is on the it's called a vertical blanking gap. You wait till it's at the edge of the screen before it's moved over, like in a typewriter, a
Carriage
line
return.
return. Yeah, you wait for it to be going down to the next row, and in that split like microsecond that it's doing that, you can change a bunch of RGB values. So even though the rest of the Amiga thinks it's still displaying the same 16 colors, you now have whole new colors
So
that you
that's
can
that's what you
display.
meant by it thinks it's 16 colors, but it's actually a lot. Yeah,
Exactly.
okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Thank Mike.
Right.
Thank you for such the insightful comments and information. Like I said, I'm learning a lot. I got a couple more questions
Yep.
here for you. Well, first of all, have you played Reshooter?
I have not played it yet,
Okay.
but I've been keeping a very thrilled with its overall quality. And that is one of the many projects that I and Bitbeam Canon, Corey, and myself, like I said, I think I told you, I don't remember if I brought it up in the stream. We are already working with or going to be working with other developers that are working on high quality games just to help bring them up to AAA quality, console arcade quality. And Reshooter was one of the games that got my attention. So was this Rygar. That's the name, right? Rygar
Rygar. Yep.
game.
It's a
Yeah,
yeah. It's a port. It's a port of the arcade
it's
game, like
obviously a
almost like a
beautiful.
perfect port.
Right. It's a beautifully and extremely competently done engine, and I already put out feelers vaguely, but I'm not going to reveal any more and if any decisions have been made or anything. But those are the sort of projects where we want to contact people or make an open invitation. There you have someone that put all this love and time and expertise into making this incredibly good arcade port. He now has the code for a side-scrolling action game. uh, Bitbeam Canon and I'm sure Pixel Glass would love to work with people like this. I would love to be able to help completely change that into a new IP, into a new franchise, and where the programmer that put in all this hard work can actually sell copies of it and be rewarded for his incredible dedication and achievement in quality. So, and like I said, I am already with people to do that sort of thing with other projects that I can't speak about yet. But that's a big part of what Bitbeam Canon wants to be, and a bunch of our YouTube videos will be that very thing. We'll get the graphics, we'll have interviews with the programmer, where we'll get into all this really cool, hardcore, technical constraint conversations with them, asking how the sprites are used, asking how many color indices are available, all of these things, and then we will lovingly, in video, in real time, start making new mock-ups within these technical constraints, editing the graphics, sometimes completely replacing the graphics and saying, this is what we recommend to bring up the quality, and explaining why. So every aspiring pixel artist for Amiga games will learn, and even beyond, just any aspiring pixel artist will learn from two like decade plus pro pixel artists how and why specific design decisions are made in legit retro pixel art. So, but anyway,
Mike, that's amazing. I've got some really good questions here. I've got a
yep,
few like more general ones that I want to ask you. We'll do like one more like super technical one. I love that. By the way, I love that you're gonna do that stuff over on your YouTube channel because I
Yep.
like for example, like I don't have the ability to get that technical because I just
Right.
don't understand the game design
Right.
that much. But I'm gonna be watching. I'm gonna be learning.
It's already begun. Please like and subscribe. Go to our YouTube channel. Its channel is called Bitbeam Canon, and
If you
please
want a
do. The
link,
faster,
if you want a
yeah,
link, just do !Mike in the chat.
yeah. The faster we grow, the more encouraged and excited we are to just keep that momentum going. The sooner we can monetize on YouTube in general, the less we'll have to come begging and mentioning our Patreon channel, or it's just the more hours, more man hours we'll be able to invest, not only making our own games as high quality as we can, but helping everyone else just raise their own standards and shake off, like I said, shake off that limiting attitude that we literally, there's no need for it. And literally the things that made that cloud very legitimate, they're gone and we don't know it yet. It's kind of like there's a thing in psychology where you know about in the maze.
So you broke up a little bit there. You said in
Okay.
psychology that
The rats in the maze,
rats
you know
in the
how
maze,
they
yeah.
would put rats in the maze. They were also studying psychology and like picture you put the rats in the maze. Imagine if rats grew their whole life in the maze,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a glass ceiling on top, right? But eventually, after a couple generations, you've got these subspecies of rats that they just stopped trying, and the parents of the offspring stopped trying to climb out, right? So eventually, you have like rats that grow into adulthood in the maze that never, you could remove the glass and they would never
Go out.
even try. And so like the Amiga community, we need to look up and there anymore. Like all of the big things that cause this restriction in creativity and collaboration, the big things, they're not there anymore. So,
That's great. That leads into one of the next question from Santi. I've got a lot of good questions here. I don't want to miss them. I'm gonna try and
right.
hit them all. But he's like, why all the movement for the Amiga now? Like suddenly it's like back again.
Mhm.
Do you have the feeling to bring back a new generation to make games for Amiga? Like why now with the Amiga?
Like I mentioned
Yeah.
briefly before, it's just sometimes the stars just all align. And subtle parts of it are just a lot of us now, like Bill was saying, like we're grown-ups now with jobs, and we've reached an age and we've built up our fields of expertise. For many of us it's programming, for people like me it's graphics and game design in general. So, and we're feeling nostalgic, and retro games are huge. A small team now that like there's this incredibly important thing in game development, especially indie game development, which is investment versus reward. And in the Amiga community, the paradigm was the opposite. The reality was you could be incredibly passionate and incredibly skilled, but you were not going to make a super high quality Amiga game because it would be extremely you would have to spend way more time than doing it for another platform, and you would be guaranteed to never be able to turn a profit, let alone make your money back on your time. And we've all got families to
Sure.
feed and rent and mortgages to pay and stuff like that. So you have the people now with these peak levels of actual ability combined with that nostalgia. Like we're settled in our day jobs. We have the knowledge base we always wanted to have back in the day, and now retro games is huge. And like I said, so many people make the mistake these days of getting into the game industries, and even their first indie project, they want to try to make like a ridiculous like Unreal Engine Doom 2000 whatever
Right.
gear all by themselves or with a tiny team. And even if they pull it off, they're up against the big like an ocean of equal or better quality games as far as production value, with infinitely more marketing power. Right? They've got the big companies. They have the infrastructure and the money to throw at advertising. So you're going to spend all this time making as high quality games you can, and it's going to get lost in the shuffle. I have friends that can tell you horror stories, professional game developers that like quit their day jobs, made very high quality games that just
Oh.
disappeared in the ocean of good quality games that are out there on modern platforms. The amazing thing with retro games a tiny team can work in a very reasonable amount of time and make a very high quality retro appealing to a giant audience. Fantastic games like Shovel Knight and Chasm, which one of the co-creators of Chasm is a good friend of mine, one of the a fellow, just a fantastic pixel artist. These are the kind of people that we can attract to a situation where the game will be flake proof, the engine's done, there's a supportive community, all of these things that eliminate most of the risk. And then if we prove, if Pixel Glass and Bitbeam Canon and Enable Software, which is Alex, I don't know if it's more than Alex, but for Metro Siege, it's been Alex so far. If we prove it and we have a successful game and we are able to pay our bills or better, making a very high quality retro game that, as bragging rights and for the Amiga community, actually runs on 30-year-old Amigas, if we prove that, we are going to attract a lot of other retro game developers that just love retro games as a style, because we've just completely shifted that investment versus reward paradigm. Because you're way more likely to stand out if you make a high quality retro game than you are if you make a high quality non-retro. So there's a real good, and like I said, it's bragging rights. If it's now
it runs on the real hardware.
Yeah,
You don't have.
it's not retro style. It's not.
It's
Oh,
retro.
it mimics retro. It's
It
an
is actually
actual
retro.
retro game, and yeah. So for those reasons and more, but a lot of it is actually just we all became friends over the years. We developed our skills. We settled into our income, into our families. We're starting to get back a little bit of free time, and we now have the ability to do what we always wanted to do. That just happens to all be coalescing. It's all, the stars are all aligning. But the point is, these ideas I have, this information I want to share, we could go from, oh, that's cool, we have this burst of some new good quality Amiga games. It can go so far beyond that with very little additional effort, and we can end up with way more really high quality Amiga games, not just in the short term, but for the next foreseeable future. And that's, yeah.
Well, that, I mean, amazing answer, Michael, and it makes sense. It's kind of like a perfect storm of things happening right now. We're at the right age.
Mm-hmm.
Retro happens to be back. It's the perfect time. My man, Mr. Cola, has got a great question. Mr. Cola is a young guy who's new to the Amiga, and he's saying
Awesome.
for someone who's unfamiliar with Amiga development, where do you start? He's been thinking about trying his hand at making something on the Amiga and was curious what people would suggest.
That's a really good question. I would say it depends greatly what your interest in area, somewhat expertise. If you have a foundation, if you have a mind for interest for programming, the answer is going to be completely different than if your interest and aptitude is in art, right? And like I said, the paradigms have shifted so much. In every project, in every video series we're working on at Bitbeam Canon, we are trying to prove things to encourage and empower people and to give them more information so they just can, like, they know what they're doing when they start, and there's less blind groping and less being unsure of yourself, like, what do I do, where do I go next?
Right.
We're even going to cover stuff like marketing and making sure your game gets published or that you can self-publish, all of these things. And so as an example, let's say you became interested in the Amiga, you want to make an Amiga. Let's say you're an artist. To make your project flake proof, you can start with mock-ups like I did that ended up getting a dream team. I literally have been dreaming about making Siege my whole life, and just through this alignment of the stars and the foresight and passion of John to introduce me to Alex, it's becoming a reality. And I literally could have dreamt of a better team to make this game. And hopefully the end product will show this. But the point is, this started with a mock-up. I am an artist. I stuck with what I was really strong, and I sort of, it's all about impressing the right people and proving the concept. So always have nearly impossible goals, like big goals, but the trick is to break it down into very achievable milestones. every day. If you want to be a real productive person, it doesn't matter if it could be in culinary things, it could be writing, it doesn't matter. A stonemason,
And
it
specific
doesn't
goals
matter.
too. You need specific goals.
Exactly.
Yes.
You have your big plan. You figure out, what do I need to do? Break it down into small milestones that are much more achievable and realistic within a short time span. And then every day, I can't stress this enough. Get into the habit of making yourself a checklist. It can be on paper, it can be in your head. I really recommend on paper, or like a tablet or your desktop computer on like Notepad or something. Every day, checklist. What things can I get done today that will help get me closer to finishing this small milestone, and move toward the finished big dream I have. So if you want to design games for the Amiga, if you're an artist, it's a very different approach. If you're a programmer, obviously you're going to want to introduce yourself to the learning material, but more importantly, the incredible treasure of the Amiga community, people like Code Tapper, people like Michael Ness, so many people, Sam Crow, there's so many. Um, but yeah, like I'm almost afraid to mention specific names because 5 million people in the Amiga community are so awesome that I don't want to accidentally forget. But the point is, uh, no matter what your interest in, if you're a pixel artist, you have it a little easier, because
Deep paint
most of
and
what you need to
brilliance.
learn, yeah, but not only that, most of what you need to learn doesn't it's not 100% overlap with Amiga. You can become a fantastic pixel artist joining general pixel art forums, watching pixel art tutorials, as exist already in Bitbeam Canon, and there are many more. And but then also meet the members of the Amiga community that know the specific hardware constraints of the Amiga, and start reading with interest the articles by Code Tapper and people like that, and the interviews of the programmers, and you'll learn the really specific graphical technical limitations, so you can start to be able to come up with all these cool tricks and gimmicks that are necessary to make a game look like Metro Siege run on an Amiga 500. So again, it's all about realistic steps. Get better at what I'm doing. In the case of artists, make mock-ups. In the case of programmers, start with your first Hello World program, but make sure you've spent most of your time finding the resources of information and help you're going to need today. It's like that. One of my favorite expressions is measure twice, cut once, right? It's like that.
Yes.
I can speak from a real experience where I was pulled in. I was like a lead artist in the game studio for mobile that I was in, and there was an artist whose job was doing porting of like, once a game was made for one phone, he was in charge of scaling the graphics down or up so that it'll work to other phones specifications, like screen sizes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the art director sent me down to his department to help him, because he was in a panic, because he had to port like 5 different games, like one game, to 5 different sizes in a relatively time. And he was in a panic, and he was just sort of, oh, nose to the grindstone, I'm just gonna do it, and stuff like that. And I went down there, and I had spent a year at Gameloft New York, where it was incredibly cutthroat pace, and you had to pull a miracle out of your butt every day to not get fired.
Jesus, that's terrible,
So
terrible, uninspiring working conditions.
yeah, it's trial by fire. You know, after a year, you are tempered for, there's almost no such thing as a level of stress or expectations that you can't handle. So if you've got the sort of emotional constitution for it, it's great to become strong fast. But while you're in it, it is hell. And if you're trying to have a relationship at the same time, you better have an insanely understanding significant other.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
So Mike, I'm speaking of significant
yep.
others. I'm gonna have to unfortunately wrap up the stream on the
Yep.
sooner side. There's just a couple of quick questions I want to get to. Are you going
Yep.
to Amiga 34
Okay.
by any chance?
I cannot. Time and other constraints allow that
Understood.
this year, but hopefully, depending on how well things go and the level of support, things like that, I would love to do. So not this time.
But there'll be more. I mean, it's got to be Amiga 35, right? Amiga 40.
Right, exactly.
3D Code Warrior, thank you so much for the bits. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for all your support. Let's see. I do need to get one more technical question, and then let's see. maybe I don't know if there's a quick answer. I just want to get it. I want to get Trial's answer. He goes, can you talk about the limitations with the Amiga chip memory? There was a port on the Atari ST recently of Ghouls and Ghosts that stored all the main sprite data with an expanded 4 megabyte ST. This couldn't be done even on AGA with this 2 megabyte limit. Other tricks to get around this? Oh, that makes sense. Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, this brings it back. You were showing the video, the Spriter prototype. So
It's
there's
on the screen right now.
awesome. So the most important way that we were able to make Metro so cool, after John introduced me to Alex and we decided what game to make, I said, all right, the thing that makes the most sense to me is the brawler, but, and I put this giant caveat, it's not realistic. We cannot make the game to the caliber, to the quality that I would want to just bother working on it if we don't use a modular animation system to animate the characters. And what that means is the characters are not full frame images per frame of animation. The characters are actually made out of a handful, and like you would be shocked.
We're seeing it right now.
If you have me back on the show,
yeah.
if you have me back on the show, I'll show you the actual sprite sheet of head images, chest images, arm images, and stuff that make the full move and animation set for the characters. It is remarkably small, and that is its own. Like if you're an artist and you want to make games for an Amiga, learn this, because, and that's the other thing I wanted to mention, we are bringing tools to the community to make doing stuff like this easier and easier. You guys have probably heard of the Scorpion engine.
Oh, and that was the next question. What do you think of the Scorpion engine from Iraq?
Very cool stuff. He contacted me and asked me for permission to add the Spriter prototype modular animation mode and format and tool into his engine. And what this means is you'll be able to animate and have larger, more smoothly animated characters with way more animations, fit them in memory so you could just have much higher caliber games. And this is especially important for things like brawlers, fighters like Street Fighter, if you want it to really be comparable with an arcade or console on an Amiga. And bosses, giant bosses.
Oh yeah, nice.
This is critical. Like all the great treasure games on the Mega Drive, stuff like that, where you have these giant bosses moving around. They were made out of body part images that were moved around independently to create all of the animations. And that's how we're doing. And that is coming to more. It's coming to the Scorpion engine, and
wow,
we'll be able to do cooler and cooler, more AAA quality things easier and easier, even with Amos. And that's a huge part of my excitement and why I'm here. Community.
Awesome, Mike. Yeah, I think a lot of folks are in Europe, and they're gonna have to call it a night soon. I'm gonna have to call it a night soon as well. Invent Kevin, who did the graphics on Reshooter, and I believe he's doing the graphics on Rygar as well. He said we need to bring you back for part 2. You're welcome, Mike. You're welcome on the stream anytime, and it's been awesome having you. Amix through and two, my man Michael from Amitopia has got to sleep, but he said it was a fantastic stream, and there's so much interesting information. I agree. Mr. Cola said thank you for the response. He's inspired and ready to go make some Amiga games.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
keep in mind, everyone.
Vamped Amiga is a great comment. It's a great sense of cooperation, folks in the Amiga community.
Yep.
And Santi makes a great point. Santi said that now that you're in my Discord channel, if you could keep us up to date on it, because there's a lot of like really pro developers in that Discord channel, and a lot of Amiga developers in there, like Invent in there and Erox in there. They're all in there, so they'd all be interested in talking with you and sharing ideas. Everyone's in there, so that'd be really cool. Richmond Mike's a great stream. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, it's been an awesome stream. We want Mike back. We want more Mike.
Everyone. Thanks everyone so much for the support, showing up and spreading the word like you have. And it is a big part of it, not just for our momentum and success, but for drawing those other people in there. If we prove this concept, there's no stopping. I guarantee you, I know, and Corey is proof that. Like I said, we're retro developers and pixel artists. We're crazy that way. When we see a 16-bit system and you start explaining these limits, it doesn't turn us off; it turns us on. And if we have the opportunity to make our games and have it nearly flake-proof, if we can set up the support community and the engines like I said, dust off the treasures that are just waiting. One last idea I want to get in this stream, and believe it or not, people, I think I only covered like half of the things I wanted to say.
I've got an 8-page document and
Yeah,
everything, but I think we've
yeah.
hit a lot, Mike. It's been pretty awesome.
If you want to have me back, there's definitely. But the point is, one of the things that we could put use to in the Amiga community is the insanely talented programmers and artists in the demo scene. Imagine if
Yes,
suddenly we were
yes.
doing one of the competitions annually was based on game engines and game proof of concepts and building upon already existing engines to make them even better and more impressive and more flexible. We're going to start attracting people from outside the Amiga community really quick. And just as importantly, the people already within the Amiga community, we're just going to have these amazing tools and the efforts of these programmers now all working toward a singular goal to just, we'll have an explosion of high quality Amiga games. So those are the sorts of things that I'll get into more detail. I will join the Discord more frequently. In the meantime, it's going to take Corey and I time to settle. We're just two guys with day jobs, and so we've been busting butt to update our website and our YouTube channel and maintain that and stuff. But we will certainly at some point frequently check on Discord and keep everyone up to date there. In the meantime, there is the YouTube channel, our website, and the Patreon, which you can look in on even if you're a patron. There's just the like really private videos you have to be a backer of. Like I think the minimum patronage is something like $2 or something like
Oh,
that.
that's
So
it's less than a beer a month.
yeah,
But Mike, yeah,
yeah,
it'd be awesome.
exactly.
Like, and also on the Discord channel, it'd be
Yeah,
great to have you there and participating. But I also have an area like where you can like post your YouTube video.
yeah,
So like when you guys come up with a new
yes,
video, feel free to like post it in my
yeah,
Discord, and so everyone can go check it
yeah,
out and help support
yeah.
you.
If you don't mind, Bill, I will come.
Oh,
Because I am
sorry, you caught out there, Mike. You said if you don't mind, and then yeah.
yep. I said if you don't mind, I am a complete Discord, and I would like to come specifically and directly to you for help, pointing me in the right direction for where to post things and just teaching me a little more about Discord.
My
But
pleasure.
I will definitely do that, and sooner the better.
It's kind of
We're,
like
we're
TeamSpeak meets
yeah,
IRC. That's the way I describe
right.
Discord.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I get the general concept, but I am not remotely the exact use in the interface yet. So,
It
but
takes a
we'll
little
get
getting used to.
there, and yeah, and we'll get there as soon as we can for sure. But anyway, yeah, that's it. I could keep talking forever, and I want to thank you, Bill, for not only having me here but keeping me on point. I can go on forever about on any of these topics. I'm so passionate about it, and you did a good job making sure we covered almost every big point.
I think we did
So
pretty well, Mike. And you in
yeah,
a
yeah,
way you made my job easier because like Richard said, it's the in this stream I've done the least amount of talking on any other streams.
yeah,
So, but you made my life easy, and it's been like the
yeah,
amount of information that was on the stream is just like. I need to go back and watch it again myself because I didn't quite absorb like everything. There's
right,
so much good stuff that you shared with us, and it is much appreciated. I love the
yeah,
fact that you guys aren't just making this game like for yourselves. You are like spreading your knowledge. You're spreading your engine. You're encouraging like everyone in the Amiga community. You're trying to get new
mm,
people into the community. It's really it's mind-boggling. I'm just so impressed with you and your
right,
team. You guys are awesome.
right,
You're amazing. Like we're so lucky to have you. To me, this is like a big moment, like progressing further, progressing the Amiga further. Here in 2019, this is like a big moment. It's like wow, like the Amiga does have a future. Like for me, this is like one of the Amiga. There's a lot of Amiga futures, but this one is like one that I'm like super excited about. Like the fact that we can have these
yeah,
AAA quality games on the Amiga, because the whole thing is like we want, of course, everyone wants like a new Amiga, next generation Amiga, but you need like good stuff to use it for. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's so
right,
cool. It's also great that you're doing it for classic
yeah.
systems. I love the
Yeah,
classic systems.
yeah, and that's the funny thing about getting the most return on your doing. That's the funny thing. Even if you care most Amiga things, the best way to have that happen the soonest is to get fresh blood and to expand the Amiga community and the interest in the Amiga. And because retro is so big, the best way to do that is through high quality retro games that happen to run on Amiga, selling to the millions of people out there on Steam and other platforms that love retro games. So yeah, it's just it will benefit everyone. The better we do. And the other one last, I'll make it super short, but like I think is obvious with Corey and I and Bitbeam, and I'm sure this is true with Pixel Glass and a lot of people. There's a new paradigm going. It's all about social media,
Hmm.
and it's not just the value of the finished game. It's the value of watching us make and talk about, and the skills that we teach. And hopefully this has been entertaining. And Corey and I are trying real hard to make our YouTube channel entertaining, far beyond just hardcore Amiga people or programmers. And so it's realistic now. If you are a creative person, you really want to strongly invest, no matter what. If you want to make and sell a game, even just to Amiga people, the odds of you making your money back on your time is near infinitely greater if you have a social media presence
Sure.
and supporters through that. So anyway,
It's all about marketing, man. Social media is all about marketing. The social media is great
yeah,
because, like, when I was a kid,
yeah,
I still run it, the Westchester Amiga user group. It's a user group here in New
right,
York, and that was like the only communication I had with other Amiga users. We get together once a
right,
month, and that was it. Those were the only Amiga people I knew. And then every now and then there'd be like a magazine from Europe, like on the wall in the shop, and I'm
mm,
like, oh wow, there's like just Amiga scene in Europe too, but we didn't know anything about it. But now, thanks
right,
to like the internet and social media, like I've connected with Amiga users
right,
around the world, and it's amazing. I've met so many new people, and it's very inspiring, and I'm super super lucky to be associated with so many great people, including yourself, Mike. Thank you so
yeah,
much. Captain John loves your YouTube channel. um,
awesome.
but yeah, thanks, Mike. This has just been an amazing stream. I'm gonna wrap it up now. Thanks everyone in the chat. I'm sorry if I didn't if I missed anyone's questions, and thanks everyone who followed and subscribed. Now I have a new streaming setup. I'm not sure how to see that, but I appreciate all the support. I do these streams just to like hang out with my friends, but every time you throw some bits at me or something, it goes. We'll parlay it to the kids like we did this year with the Amigos Retro Gaming podcast. You rock, Brother Bill. Thank you, my man. Yeah. Invent's got a great point. If you have more questions, we will post them in the Discord, and Mike will answer them. I should see what your Discord handle is. It's bitbeam. It's bitbeam something.
Bitbeam, I think it's the full Bitbeam
Canon.
Canon.
Okay, bitbeam
Yeah,
Canon. I'll
yeah.
after stream I'll post up in it.
Yeah,
But
someone typed that exclamation point Mike one last time so people can get the
I'll
links.
do it. Oh yeah, I'll do it one more time. Uh, exclamation mark Mike. There's all Mike's stuff.
Yep. And
Also, there's Mike's website, his YouTube, and his Patreon.
tonight or tomorrow, I will add to the Discord, Bitbeam Canon Discord channel or whatever it's called on our website, so people can add us that way. Once I figure out how Discord works.
Yeah, we'll get you there. It's a piece. If you can
Yeah,
figure
yeah.
out how to make a game that good, you'll figure out Discord, no problem. Thanks, Mike. This has just been amazing. Thank you so much. At the end of every stream, I tend to raid one of my friends. Shallon is streaming right now. I don't know super well, but he does like live coding for the Commodore 64, and he's dissecting a
Awesome.
Commodore 64 game right now. So we'll give him a raid. And before we give him the raid, we're gonna take it to the hot tub. Thanks, Task. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you for all your work. Yeah, huge thanks. Not only Mike is the face of the team, but also much respect to Task from Pixel Glass. If you want to know about Pixel Glass, do !Pixel Glass. They're the team behind Worthy, like one of the best, most amazing Amiga games of last year. Corey Annis is also from Bitbeam, and Alex Brown, Alpine 9000 from Pixel Glass. They're the team behind this amazing game. So. Wow, yeah, it is time for the hot tub, Yuri. Time for the hey, what's up, 10 minutes? How's it going, buddy? Mike, thanks again so much. And guys, I'm going to stream again. My plan is to stream 1 week from today, and I'm going to have the guys from Double Sided Games on. They're doing some really great stuff for the Amiga and Commodore 64, and Jeremy is a personal friend of mine who exhibits with me at the Vintage Computer Festival. So I'm really excited to check out his new Amiga game as well. It's a dungeon crawler and a new Commodore 64 game he's got as well. So exciting times, Mike. Exciting times, and I think you're inspiring everyone.
I hope so.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Hopefully, I'll see you next Thursday. It would be great. And Mike, thanks again for everything. You rock, dude. It's been a pleasure having
Thanks.
you.
You too.
All right. Cheers. Amiga forever.
Shine